look, I don't mean any disrespect. He just didn't play that well, not for a guy of his caliber.
If they don't run the ball here, I'm going to vomit. I swear to God.
I don't really have any recollection of that at all, but I guess perhaps I blacked it all out.
You know, they won, but I'm going to be miserable all week because they stunk. Dan Aguirre, I look forward to this show more than I look forward to masturbating. Oh, it's great to be back with you. This week that has passed has been too long for my taste. We have got quite the show. We got a special guest coming. Mike Schaefer has been invited by the great Dan Aguirre, and I am applauding that invitation. Mike is going to be here to talk about sports and the ESPN show that he was on. Tell us a little bit about that, Dan. What intrigued you about inviting Mike Schaefer to Dan and Aldo Bare Their Souls?
Well, I've been wanting to ask he and the Mark guy, who's unfortunately not going to be on here with us, but ESPN did like a 5-6 episode 30 for 30 kind of deal. Back in 2017, they filmed it during the 2016 season. But I, interested in asking him questions like, well, how did they pick your section, and how were you all chosen? Like, what went into it? I did watch that front to back, even albeit 4 or 5 years ago. So I haven't seen it in a while. But I would like to ask him about that and about his face mask, which I actually bought. And no shit, I remember I was texting the group, Santucci and everybody, during the game, the Bears were playing New Orleans last season. I was like, man, I love that face mask and Nagy's rocking tonight. And it turns out that's the one that Mike Schaefer created.
That is right. And I'm anxious to hear his side of the story of what happened when the Chicago Bears called him and said, hey, you can't do that. That's a copyright infringement.
Yeah, I didn't even know that. So yeah, even more. I'd like to have him on here. And I always took a little bit of umbrage with his Duerson jersey in the sense that, again, this is in the weeds, but on that 30 for 30, he was wearing the Duerson jersey, but it was clearly made in this era because it had the TV numbers up top. But when Dave played, they were down in the sleeve. So I was like, man, I wouldn't wear that because the shit's not right. But, that's just me. I was going to say that to him.
Zach Sullivan is in the chat room. He is wondering, why does Dan say caliper instead of caliber? Caliper is a part of a car braking system.
I didn't even realize I said that. Oh, well.
He also adds that we're going to have to start drawing penises on your face until you get your camera working. You want to explain to people once and for all why it is you're not on camera?
I am at work, and you'll say, well, God, he's going to talk 3 hours. How's he at work? Because I've basically did tonight's work yesterday. And I still had a little bit to do. Like you asked me, you're like, are we good? I was like, I'm 90%. I have to finish. But long story short, as I've shown you, because you can vouch for me.
Oh, absolutely.
Our studios are well away from the computer towers. I don't know how the engineer, Keith, did all that, but I'm too far away to rig up a camera. I mean, it's just absolutely not plausible.
Mm-hmm. Well, people are missing your actual moving face, although I did choose an excellent picture of you. You told me that this picture that I chose of you, you were actually, the expression was related to something that you look happy in the picture, but you were actually reacting to something that wasn't quite happy. By the way, Zach says he's just joshing, and it's all in good fun. He loves you as much as I love you.
Oh, I appreciate that. Is the picture the one where I was just acting like Nicholson in The Shine?
I think that might be it. Yes.
Yeah.
That is great. Hey, before we get Mike in here, he's scheduled to join us at the top of the hour. I want to talk a little bit about Justin Fields, and also when he's on, also get his thoughts on Justin Fields. I got to tell you, and I'm in the minority of Chicago Bears fans who feel like it's finally setting in that the Bears have Justin Fields as their quarterback. And I think that for me personally, it was because when he was drafted, I was busy working the show and they made this trade and I was excited, but I also had to worry about the controls and stuff. And then in the subsequent days, I'd been working so hard on other material for the bar room and so forth that I never got a chance to just kind of sit back as a fan like you would if you're just, having a beer and watching the draft and celebrating. I never had that opportunity. Well, this past weekend with the rookies reporting to camp, got to see some video of him on the field with his practice jersey on, got to hear him, and I got a few audio clips of him talking to the media. And now it's finally, for me, setting in. Now, for you, Dan, it set in like immediately because you immediately ordered your jersey of him, right?
Yeah, that's interesting too, is that I got Kevin White like that and Mitchell Trubisky, and almost immediately, if I wore the jersey out somewhere, now, granted, Kevin White played here, so you could imagine that. But even Mitch, people would say, oh, you've got the Trubisky jersey already. Like, no one has made a comment. I've worn the Fields jersey 2 or 3 times already, and no one has acknowledged it. Nobody has said anything about it. The Bears, as far as I can remember, haven't had a number one other than, Jeff Jager or Cody Parkey. So no one was wearing their jersey. And it's obviously the kid from Ohio State. Nobody fucking has not acknowledged my jersey yet. So I don't know. I don't know what that means, but I hope that it means this fucking guy is going to be great somehow.
And by the way, you just reminded me of something that I'm just going to inject here. We don't have to talk about it, but there's been some tweets lately that, Mike North doesn't want a black guy as the quarterback.
Oh, get the fuck out. I don't believe that.
I don't believe that either. Mike is on record as wanting Deshaun Watson over Mitch Trubisky, and he was not a Mitch Trubisky fan. Mike will always be the naysayer, and it wasn't until Trubisky showed up at camp wearing the Mike Ditka costume, not camp, but to a press conference during the Halloween Day game of 2018, 19, whatever it was. And he showed up wearing a Mike Ditka costume with the mustache and the sunglasses and the old time sweater and so forth, that Mike absolutely fell in love with Mitch Trubisky. And so when people say, he doesn't want a black quarterback and they're associating it with his comments about Ohio State quarterbacks not succeeding in the NFL, I don't see what the connection is, but I want to stand up for my buddy Mike North and say, come on, how about a stretch?
How about he worked 20 years with Dan Jiggets, who happens to be an African-American male?
Yep. How about
so if he had a problem with black people, he doesn't.
Right. How about that he worked for an African-American owned newspaper for 2 years, writing a column for them? How about that he worked with Reverend Jesse Jackson on having the Ernie Banks statue erected? How about I can give you a list of things? Mike might be insensitive sometimes with some of the things that he says, like I am, and maybe sometimes Dan is. I'm just assuming, but I don't think he's a racist. And if he is, I would not be working with him. And he's a good friend, and I know him very well. So I wish people would stop making those assumptions. So
well said.
Thank you. All right. We got 15 minutes here. I'm going to set this thing up regarding Justin Fields and whether he should be the starting quarterback year one. And then when Mike joins us, we can talk with him a little bit, get his opinion, and then we can talk about the ESPN show and some of the other things that he's done. So this is Chris.
Can I tease something first?
Absolutely.
We have a big announcement we'll make later in the show.
Well, why don't we do it now?
Oh, I didn't want to step on what you were saying.
No, that's fine. I mean, we don't have an outline for the show. We just go by the seat of our pants. And I was
just doing a radio thing. We're like, stay tuned.
You want to do it that way? That's fine.
No. You drive the car, man.
Okay. Dan and I have an announcement. We're going to become roommates in Cleveland for the Browns game. Go ahead, Dan. Take it away.
I mean, it's exciting, man. I'm working, like I said, 84 hours this week. as an example of getting this overtime money just to pay for, granted, a second trip as well to see Nine Inch Nails. But bottom line is, like, the whole like off season I've been toying. I was like, man, I'd like to come to Chicago. I'd like to come to Chicago, see the Bears at Soldier Field this year. And the tickets are just, astronomical. Plus, whether it's flying or driving, and it just the money didn't make sense this season. And I'm thinking that it can and will in 2022. But instead of just being defeated, we kind of pointed out to each other. I don't remember who said it first, but Cleveland is a 6-hour drive for me, and it's a 6-hour drive for you. So it's literally like midpoint for both of us. So then it was, well, okay, let's see if we can get this together. And initially I had booked us a Hilton and, all that stuff. And as it turned out, like you said, your wife got us even better of a room that we can walk to the stadium. So long story short, we're going to be at the week 3 matchup, Chicago at Cleveland. The Bears have never won a game with me in attendance. This needs to be the time that shit changes. But so we'll be at the Bears-Browns game, and hopefully we can do some podcast stuff that weekend, and maybe somebody else will be able to join us as well.
Absolutely. And that's, I think, the big news is any Bears fans that are going to be in Cleveland, and especially what we like to call affectionately people who follow the Barroom Network, Barflies. If you are going to be in Cleveland, let's set up a some type of gathering. I'm actually looking into to see whether the hotel room has a meeting area where perhaps Dan and I can do a show together and also have a live audience. So that's on the table. But what I'm most excited about is the suite that my wife got Dan and I. My wife immediately was concerned that I was going to be sharing a bedroom with a big 6'5" white guy with a huge penis. And she said, no way are you going to be sleeping in the same room with him. I'm going to find you guys a suite. He's going to have his own bedroom and I will have my own bedroom. And I said, thanks, darling. I was afraid he was going to rape me. So.
Oh, my goodness gracious. I'm going to play the homophobic card on you now. God, I would have slept in the same fucking bed if it meant we were going to the fucking game. It didn't mean I wanted to sodomize you. I haven't gone to a Bears game since Tressman was coach, so I'm pretty excited about
Whoa.
it.
Well, I mean, what I'm most worried about is your record of the Bears losing every time you attend a game. What is that record at now?
It's like 0-5.
Oh my gosh. I mean, and they're facing a really good Cleveland Browns team. This team has done some tremendous things in terms of.
Well, you never know. That can change year to year. The NFL is a year-to-year league. Like going into 19, we all thought our chests were pumped out and thought Super Bowl, baby. And we had a solid 2018. And what did we do in 2019? Nothing. So you never know. Can Cleveland make the playoffs 2 years in a row? I mean, they should. But when is the last time the Cleveland made the playoffs 2 years in a row? Let's pump the brakes. Maybe. Probably. But hey, it's a winnable game. Vegas says we're only favored to win, according to Brad Biggs' story, three times in 2021. But fuck that, man.
Yeah.
You just never know. Like Mayfield could get hurt in week 1 for all we know.
Mm-hmm.
And some bum, I don't even know who their backup is. It could just be some horrific bum. It could be what's our backup quarterback from 16 that was in Buffalo last year? It could be Matt Barkley.
I
don't know who they're about. You just never know like how things are going to go.
Yeah, but the thing is, Dan, is that they've done so much to improve the defense. And so this defense that the Bears offense, which is still going to be in its infancy, so to speak, with Andy Dalton or Justin Fields, which we'll be talking about soon, is going to face a really good defense with an excellent pass rush. So that's what worries me about that game. Whoever the quarterback is going to be in a hostile environment and playing a defense that over the offseason has improved themselves. And they weren't bad to begin with. So they should field a good team. Now, you're right. I mean, anything can happen between now and then. when they talk about the strength of schedule, winning percentage from last year, that doesn't mean a goddamn thing, because we all know that last year's team is not going to be taking the field this upcoming season. Things change, and guys get better, they get worse, their personnel changes, his coaching philosophy changes. All of that is different. I don't look at last year's results. That whole strength of schedule thing is bullshit in my mind, Dan.
I agree, because it's two different seasons. I mean, you never know, like, what's going to, like, let's say we go to Pittsburgh, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's in week 9. You never know if, like, this is going to be a year that Roethlisberger has a resurgence and you're like, wow, they're going to end up having Big Ben another year. Or if this is the final year where he just falls on his face and you're just like, this guy can't play anymore, which is what everyone was saying after last year. Even the Steeler fans I know that said that Big Ben can't throw anymore. But, I mean, would it surprise me if he come out and was throwing 500 yards sometime this season? No, because the guy's been a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback. What I'm saying is, by the time the season gets going, it has its own shape every season, and it's usually not connected to the season before. So who's to say what's going to happen in that game? It is week 3. At least we don't have to worry about that lake effect snow yet. That's a good thing. And we can walk from the hotel to the stadium. We don't have to worry about Uber or a taxi. We're going to walk to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's going to be a really good time, man.
It's going to be a great time. And I told Dan this, because he rightfully so, like all of us, we're concerned about funds and so forth. And I said, Dan, you deserve a great time. You work your ass off. You've got 2 jobs. Yeah,
but that's not unique to, I mean, a lot of people have 2 jobs.
Oh, I know. But they deserve a break too. I'm not saying you're exclusive on
this. I need to interrupt you. You deserve credit on this, because not that I wasn't going to acknowledge it, but I didn't want to embarrass you either. So I wasn't sure if you wanted to put this out there. But Aldo specifically, or I should say Aldo. I always want to call you Aldo.
It's fine. Either way, it's fine.
Okay. Well, I'm comfortable calling you Aldo for some reason.
That's cool.
Well, Aldo said, hey, man, I got it. I'm going to pay for the tickets, which, again, embarrasses me to say that in one regard, because I'm not trying to have a victim complex here. But other than, like, my mom, or for a short period, when I was married for a couple of years, but 5, 6 years, whatever. But even just for a couple of years of that, Marissa would be, apt to doing some things for me. For the most part, what I'm trying to say is, if I'm going to a game or a concert, I'm the one who's picking up the bill for everybody. And I don't even know how to react to it, almost like, and again, I don't want to be dramatic, but I know that I'm gracious and appreciative of the fact that you've bought the tickets, but I'm still, like, kind of stunned by it, like, favorably. Because usually if somebody, like, I know if my wife would have bought me something, she would immediately throw it up in my face as soon as she got aggravated with me, Like, well, I bought you those fucking tickets. I guess I shouldn't have.
I promise not to say that. I promise not to say that.
Well, I didn't say that you would. I'm just giving you an example. It makes me feel, I'm extremely gracious about it.
I know you are. You're that kind of soul. You're a guy who is always very appreciative of anybody does a favor for you, whether it's small or large. And I gotta say, Dan has done so much for the bar room over the years. I mean, he was when Phil Otoshin was here, he was a kind of the voice of a lot of the stuff that Phil would do, tracks and stuff like that. But beyond that, he's done so many more other things for other shows, and then working with him on this show while he's at actually work and stuff. I'm just very appreciative that he is a part of the Barroom Network, and so I wanted to treat him on these tickets. It's the least I can do. Absolutely.
Well, not to pat myself on the back, but one of the things I think I've done, if I was going to brag about myself, is just hooked people up with games and stuff, and I've never wanted anything for that. Not that means, someone should buy me a ticket. I didn't mean that, but I mean, I think that's the coolest thing I've done, is just been like, hey man, do you want 35 Bears games mailed to you? Like, I've done that. And again, it's worth saying that I wish Shane and Phil well, and it was Phil who brought me initially to the bar room, but when I was gone for that period, when we had a little bit of a some miscommunication. You're the one who reached out to me and said, hey, well, let's get this resolved. It wasn't them, so it's not that I wasn't loyal to them. I wanted to be loyal to everybody. Mm-hmm. So, but that's why I'm here, because you were going to Alabama and you said, hey, let's talk when I come back for the stuff they do for the college kids down there. What's that called? In January.
Yeah. Spring break. No, I don't know.
No, it was the football related stuff. Like where they have all the
the Senior Bowl.
Yeah. You were going to the Senior Bowl, and you said we'll talk when I come back, and that's when it all got resolved, and any friction that we may or may not have had in early 2020. So anyway, I just don't want for some reason, if Phil heard this, be like, well, Dan's disloyal. I don't think that I am, and I still wish them well. And
oh yeah, and I do too. I like I said when we parted ways, was those guys are outstanding content communicators, and I'm sure that they are doing even bigger and better things than were done before here at the Barroom, and wish them total happiness and success, especially their families.
I hope. I don't know for sure, but like I told you, Shane said they has a kid on the way. Yeah. We can acknowledge that Zimmerman's kid was born and is healthy, and the lady's healthy too. So that's awesome.
Brittany is healthy. AJ is healthy, and it's a cute looking kid. So yeah, congratulations, Zim, Brittany, and AJ. And there's I think a 7-year-old. Brittany's got a 7-year-old son, and so that's Zim's stepson. So it's a family of 4 already, and so that's fabulous news. Hey, before we do get into this Justin Fields thing, I got a little bit of tape here that maybe this is a good spot to put it in. It is Eric Galco, is because you just mentioned the Senior Bowl, so it brought it to light. Eric Galco is the new executive director of the East-West Shrine Game, which is now moving into its 97th year. It's one of the premier all-star games of college football. And Eric is a great guy. He worked with Greg Gabriel in the XFL. The extended full interview that I had with Eric, I'm posting tomorrow on the Barroom Network's YouTube and audio podcast sites. But I wanted to share with the Dan and Aldo crowd what Eric said about the Chicago Bears draft. Now, I didn't include Justin Fields. I was saving that for the long interview because it was part of another question. But here is Galco talking about all of these draft picks. It's about 3 or 4 minutes long. So let's play that. And then probably around then, Mike will join us. Here it comes. I'd love to borrow your scouting expertise. You gave us some thoughts already on Justin Fields. If you could talk to us perhaps a little bit about some of the other Chicago Bears draft picks in the second round. They picked up the tackle from Oklahoma State, Tevin Jenkins. What are your thoughts about Tevin Jenkins, and can he possibly play at the left tackle position? Danny Shimon, one of our analysts here at the Barroom, says he doesn't think Jenkins is suited for the left tackle position. What do your eyes and ears say?
Yeah, I think it was surprising to see they want to push into left tackle right away, just from my perspective, only because I think he's such a plug-and-play ready right tackle, arguably, talking to some teams, maybe the most NFL-ready right tackle in this draft class. And that may sound crazy, but hey, him and Alahera Vera Tucker, who went 14th overall in the first round, they were the only 2 guys that were in that kind of first or early second round mix that had played right tackle substantially in college. So I think that the value at right tackle was there. And my philosophy may be different than Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy, but I'd say, hey, I'd rather one position be really, really good than maybe 2 in a lesser spot. But certainly he has and can play both, Tevin. I think what his strength is kind of protecting that inside foot, not giving up that inside leverage. And maybe early on as a rookie, he'll struggle with the edge rushers on the side and kind of developing that left side kick slap. But I think he was, a borderline first round talent. We were a bit low on him than some teams I know, but at the same time, we view him as an NFL starter, as an offensive tackle. And even if he's a capable NFL starter at left tackle, that's a really valuable position to have a capable starter at in the NFL. So they'll be just fine with him at left tackle, and we'll see how the offseason plays out. Maybe they get somebody else to push back right. We'll find out.
And then they picked up another tackle in the 5th round, Larry Borum from Missouri. What do you got on him?
I think he's a bit more of a project and a bit more developmental, but plenty of talent. I mean, this is the guy I remember 2 years ago watching him saying, hey, this guy might be a first-round pick at some point in the offseason. So I think incredibly talented offensive lineman who I think can play a swing tackle role for them in the future. And I think that's what maybe his future is to not be expected to start anytime soon. But, hey, we've seen in the NFL, whether it's third pass rusher or third offensive tackle, they're basically starter value positions nowadays. So you need to have 3 good offensive tackles early in your season because injuries and attrition is going to have an effect on you as well. So I think if he can be a developmental swing tackle, they'll be in good shape.
And then in the 6th round, we're super excited about the 3 6th-round draft picks they picked up, starting with running back Khalil Herbert.
Fast, really explosive, and actually one of the best second-level separators that we've seen. Analytically, he graded out as actually one of our better running backs in terms of efficiency as a player after first contact. So I think as a returner potentially, as well as on all special teams, he'll have to show some value there as well. But hey, if you can get your third running back in your depth chart in the 6th round, anybody you get in the 6th round that can stick is effective. And I think Herbert certainly a guy that can be a guy who sticks and be your 3rd or 4th running back as a rookie, which with his explosiveness could be a lot of different value for him.
Daz Newsome, the wide receiver.
Surprised he went as late as he did. I think he's going to hopefully, I mentioned they need maybe a slot receiver to play in the short area, but he's going to be a slot or a Z that can get vertical. And I think best case for Daz Newsome, if he can be impressive early on in training camp and they can have some comfort with him, I think as much as Chicago can push Darnell Mooney to be a little more like Tyreek Hill, where he's their Z or their X, but he's moving a lot pre-snap and in formations, the better. So hopefully Daz Newsome can hopefully step up and challenge in that role.
Outstanding. And then the 3rd of the 6 rounders, Thomas Graham Jr., the cornerback from Oregon. I was just reading an article about him this morning, and he has a chip on his shoulder that he went in round 6. What do you got on him?
Was surprised. I think he can maybe play inside as well as either a third safety or a slot corner as well. But I think getting cornerback depth, that's what a lot of teams wanted to do in this year's draft class is say, hey, when in doubt, take the tackle, take the corner. We saw a lot of that in late 1st, early 2nd round. I think Graham, I was surprised as well. We had kind of a fringe NFL starter grade on him, which puts him in our grading scale somewhere in the 3rd, 4th round. So if they get anything close to that in Chicago, when they hit on all 3 of those 6th round picks, along with their 2nd, their 5th round guy, and maybe a guy like Justin Fields hits as well, they'll have a pretty good draft class in hindsight.
We had a big debate among Neil and Danny on the 7th round pick, the Tonga, the interior defensive lineman from BYU. One guy wasn't quite so high on him, and another person was. Why don't you settle it and tell us what do you think the prospects are of the interior defensive lineman Tonga from BYU?
Yeah, I believe he fell a little bit in the draft based off of some of the injury concerns, but really a bull in the china shop kind of player. And I think worst case scenario, if you can get 10 snaps out of him a game at the second half of the year and he can disrupt 2 or 3 plays there, he's long, gets his arms up in the A and B gap in the passing lanes. I think he's someone that you can maybe save for the second half of the year. But again, a guy like him, even 10 to 12 snaps in a game in week 13, week 14, he bats down 2 passes or gets 1 pressure that disrupts a quarterback. You're looking at maybe a win for your team. So I think Tonga was a great value then. And again, as a 7th round pick, you can kind of readjust your perspective saying, hey, if he makes the roster, it's a win. If this guy can actually play, 10, 12 snaps for us, which I believe he can, a lot of teams I think believe he could, that's a huge win for a team that could always use some more defensive line depth along what they have right now.
That was Eric Galco, the executive director of the East-West Shrine Game. His first year, he's just been appointed that. He comes off of having a gig over at the XFL. I thought that was a pretty promising draft report. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, it's one of those. We could probably pull up 6, 7 experts, and they would say the same thing about every team's draft picks. Well, if this person hits, that person hits. But for what it's worth, what he said, it gives us hope. But honestly, I already had hope anyway.
Yeah, I know. You're a half glass empty. No, you're a half
I'm half empty in life, but with the Bears, I'm generally, except when the game starts, I get pissed at, the defense. I'm like, why are they giving up 90 yards every drive? But yeah, beyond that.
That is a real pet peeve for you, right? These long drives that the Bears defense gives up, and that the fact that they don't get off the field quick enough.
What pisses me off about it more than anything is they'll give up 5 straight 80, 90-yard drives. And then to start the 3rd quarter, you're going to hear Fox or whomever's broadcasting talk about how unassailable this defense is. No one's going to score on this defense. They've only given up 24 in the second quarter alone. You know,
See,
like,
but
God, they are so, a lot of times, reputation players. I mean, they are living on 2018 like a motherfucker. You know what I mean?
There's truth to what you're saying, Dan. At least, you know, I should phrase it. I agree with some of what you're saying, but at the same time, statistically, they compare pretty well with most of the NFL. You know, and I tell Dan this a lot when we debate this topic is other teams have much worse defenses, and maybe Mike Schaefer should come in here
But we're always pounding our chest about how great ours is my point. Like, maybe, you know, let me try to think. Who are we talking about? Let's say Washington's defense. We don't hear about how great they are week to week, though, even if we're comparable in statistics.
True. That is true. Mike is wearing a Team Mongo t-shirt. He is with us now. Mike Schaefer, co-host of the Barfly Tailgate Show, proprietor of Deep Dish Tees, the premier outlet to get all of your t-shirt and apparel needs and your barroom swag needs. Mike Schaefer, welcome to Dan and Aldo Bare Their Souls.
Wow, what an intro. I feel like I've walked into the confessional booth here. Father Dan is out there somewhere. I can't see him. I'm scared what he's going to sentence me to after this is all said and done. But I've got Aldo here with me just to kind of support it. So, yeah, man.
Your fellow sinner.
Yeah.
No, Mike, if you don't mind me saying this, and I'm not placating you when I tell you this, during, I think it was the New Orleans game, you know, I was like, man, that fucking face mask that Nagy's got today is awesome. And it happened to be the one that you created, right? Which I ended up buying. This is it. But I didn't know that at first. I just thought that's the coolest one I've seen all season. And you're connected to it, which I had zero knowledge of before I said that. And that's absolutely true.
Yeah, it's funny because you were also
Mike,
one of the first names.
Mike, hold that up one more time so that I can get you a close-up.
Yeah. Dan, you were one of the first names that I had recognized as far as like orders coming in that day or that week, whenever it was. But, you know, being on a TV show, right, is a surreal experience, right? Like you do this reality show for ESPN, you get to, you know, show off your Bears fandom and all that kind of stuff. But the day that something you sent to the coach shows up on the sidelines during a game, you know, with the NFL being so protective about what can be worn and all the uniform policies, the rules, the this, the that, I didn't know it was coming. I mean, I legit was standing there watching the game, doing a bunch of stuff around the house, and I look up and I see Matt Nagy for the first time wearing this mask. And, you know, social media blows up because a lot of people had known I started to make these things. And it all sort of kicked off in preseason when he was wearing one that looked like this, right? It was just the orange stripes. And I was like, I got to figure out a way to make that because you couldn't buy it, you know, in the stores. They didn't have it in the pro shop. They didn't have it anywhere. I'm like, I'd like to have one of those. And once I realized how easy it was to produce it, I figured, well, let me produce a white one and send it off to Hallis Hall and see what happens. And, you know, obviously the rest is sort of history there. We raised a ton of money for charity too in the process, which for me is the part I'm most proud of. You know, the fact that we were able to raise $2,500 that went directly to Bears Care, which is the official charitable arm of the Chicago Bears. You know, to be a part of that during the pandemic season, you know, that to basically have a fingerprint on the season was pretty badass. So I appreciate you bringing me on and highlighting the story. It was a hell of a month while that thing was popping.
I'm curious, if you don't mind me asking, how, when you sent it to Hallis Hall, did you address it to the Bears or Coach Nagy? Who did you actually disseminate the package to?
Yeah, I sent it straight to Matt Nagy. And I put a note inside, you know, letting him know that I was a season ticket holder and thought it was pretty cool what he'd been doing with the team, and was optimistic about, you know, the season and a turnaround and all this, you know, stuff. And, you know, it's just one of those things that you do with, you know, figuring it's a long shot that he'd even get it, right? I mean, how many gatekeepers handle the mail and decide what goes to who and what does, what gets thrown in the trash? So, again, the fact that it made it all the way through, having been addressed directly to him was pretty wild.
Yeah, that's an incredible story. And again, I'm not just saying this, that was the best design of the pandemic face mask wear that I had saw at any point. I was going to say someone out there could potentially still buy it, I would assume, and it's definitely worth getting. It's like $25 and it's awesome. It covers your entire face. But I know in a political sense that at least my state, we're releasing on June 20th that you don't have to wear a mask anymore. I don't know if that's good or bad. That's not why we're talking about it, but maybe somebody wouldn't want to buy it because of that. But still, if you're going to attend games in December or January, this could be good for one of those like 5-degree days.
Yeah, it's very true. These things keep you warm, and when you stack them up, you wear 2 or 3 of these. On those frigid December home games. Not only will they protect you against viruses, they'll also protect you against the temperatures and the elements. But I got to say, so these specific masks are unfortunately no longer available because I got the law offices of Roger Goodell reached out to me and let me know that these letters and these colors are trademarked, and we had to take it off the site. So I do have a variation of it with the Chicago Stars, which is kind of cool. So for anybody that likes the sort of the pattern, they could get it with the Chicago Stars. But had a little run-in with Roger Goodell and his team, and got it all squared away. We're good now.
It sounds like the police are knocking on your door there.
You hear that?
You're holding up that thing.
Yeah, they heard I was going to be on the show, and as soon as this went up, the sirens went off. I don't know if you guys noticed that.
Yes, I did notice that.
And Aldo, you had some trouble with the league a couple years ago over copyright.
Yeah, I mean, the NFL, I've been involved with a lot of copyright situations in my corporate career. Working for McDonald's, I had to tell certain people, hey, you can't use some of the stuff that you produce for us, freelancers and stuff. You cannot put that up there because, we have really strict copyright. Infringement.
You had to tell Dave Chappelle that about Whack Arnold's.
That's right. I called David up personally and told him off. No, but and then as the owner here of the Barroom Network, and when it was the Bears Barroom, I got some strongly worded letters from the attorney teams over at the NFL about taking down the Bears Barroom moniker, which is part of the reason we gravitated to the Barroom Network. Although I fought them, I won't go down without a fight, and they stopped sending me the emails and letters via FedEx. But I did take down the website that was called Bears Barroom at the time, and stopped selling all material that had the word Bears on it on our T-shirts and stuff. So I've been much more careful about copyright infringement, and I get it. They've paid for the brand, they've paid. They want their cut out of anything that's sold and stuff. So I understand that. I'm sensitive to that. But at the same time, I'm just wondering why they would pick on such a little guy like us over here at the Barroom. But be that as it may.
Especially when Mike is raising money for the Bears charity.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think they were actually kind of nice about it because of the charitable thing. They had said, hey, if you've got inventory, clear it out. We think what you're doing is really, really cool. And before, I think what triggered the league office to call me was NBC5 Chicago and here in town did a story on it. And Mike Berman is the sportscaster, and he had kind of asked, he's like, do you want this to be public? And I said, well, I don't know. I don't have any logos on the merchandise, but I feel like this is kind of borderline copyright stuff. And he's like, no, you know what? Don't worry about it. I think you're good. So I took his word for it. Like, he really cared. He's going after a story, right? And Mike Berman's an awesome guy. Like, I kind of got to know him throughout the process and all that kind of stuff. But I knew there was a little bit of risk to it. And like Aldo said, like, look, it's their material. It's their property. And, I'm a guy that likes to play by the rules. I don't want to, cause any rifts that don't need to be caused. Like, I'm a Bears fan. Last thing I want is, some sort of a battle with them or the league. So I, graciously took everything down. There were a few other items too I had up on the site that I thought were kind of borderline, like, I could probably, make a case for this, but I don't want to lawyer up or, get into that kind of stuff. It's just not worth it, right? There's too much cool stuff out there that we can all buy and, show off our fandom.
Speaking of fandom, you were part of the group that was chosen, and I guess it was during the 2016 season, and this aired in 2017, and I watched it at the time, but I can't say that I retained everything because it's been 4 years since I watched it. But Section 250, We Are the Fans, was that what it was called? We the Fans?
We the Fans, yeah.
How was Section 250 chosen with all the sections in Soldier Field? And obviously, there's more than the 5, 6, 7 people that were highlighted that are in Section 250. So I'm fascinated to know the story about how this came about, how you were chosen, and just shut up and listen to your story about it.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And I don't know. I mean, I think they had a dartboard in the office at ESPN, and they, probably had a cocktail or two and, threw a dart and it landed on 250. I think that was a part of it. What they did tell us, I think, throughout production was that they were looking for a section that had a diverse group of people that could be personality types that would be worth, having on TV. And I think, we've gotten to know the season tickets staff or the ticket staff with the Bears. And so I think they kind of knew a little bit about, some of the personalities in each section. I don't think I had anything to do with the selection. There are other people that are far more interesting than me in our section. My buddy Mark is obviously one of them that adds a little bit of color to the section. So I think that was a part of it. And what they did the summer before the 2016 season is they called everybody that sat in the section, and they asked everybody if they'd be interested in some sort of like a casting call, to come up to Hallis Hall, and if they'd be interested in the show. And I honestly, I don't think there was that much interest in it. I don't think that many fans thought it would be real. I think it was, kind of looked at as more of like this pilot concept. It would take some time out of your summer to go spend some time at Hallis Hall. But for me, I was like, oh, that's awesome. Like I'll do that, every day of the week if you ask me to. So they sent us up there, and we did the casting call, and they called us a week later, my wife and I, and they let us know that they wanted us to be on the show. There she is, my lovely bride. So we had things like our wedding, that were part of the season. They wanted to show life inside Soldier Field and life outside of Soldier Field, and how those two things kind of commingled. I mean, we had a blast. I think it was a little bit challenging for my wife because we were planning a wedding, and that's a stressful time as it is, let alone, having cameras in your face and, doing a whole production. So I'm lucky to have her. I'm lucky that she, kind of gave me that. She's not a huge Bears fan. Anybody that watched the show knows, that was a sort of a tension point between the two of us throughout the season. But that's kind of how it went down. It's kind of how we got picked. And I don't know, that's my story, and I'll stick to it.
I was so envious for the moment that I'm 90% sure it was you that they were focused on. And the moment that the Cubs won the World Series, that adulation that you all felt, you were in a bar watching that game, right? Didn't you attend game 5 or 6, and then but 7 you were watching it in a bar? Was that how it went?
Yeah, I was at 5 at Wrigley, so I saw the comeback sort of start. And I wish they had cameras there. And credentials were just impossible to get, and ESPN had already had their allotment set. They couldn't get people in the building. But yeah, for game 7, they were at the bar with me and a bunch of friends of mine. And so to have my wedding encapsulated in the show, then to also have that moment, which is right up there with any of my personal Chicago sports moments in my entire life, to have all that recorded and to be able to go back and watch that is really special. There was a moment, I'd have to go back and see what episode it was, but there was a moment where I didn't know the cameras had followed me, and the game was over, and it was emotional. I mean, I'm as much of a Cubs fan as I am a Bears fan, diehard Cubs fan. And I just had kind of thought back to all the games I'd gone with my dad when we were kids, and cold weather games, rainy games, and watching the team just get their butts whooped on a regular basis. You know, it was pretty rare that you went to Wrigley Field when I was a kid in the early 90s, 80s, and you saw a win outside of 84 and 89. I don't remember 84. I was too young. Anyway, you know, I had this moment after the game. I'm like, I got to call my dad and just, you know, talk to him and see how, you know, he's taking this thing. And I kind of broke down. I was a little teary-eyed talking about like all the games he had taken us to and how it was all worth it, right? How all the pain and sorrow and anguish of, you know, the 30 some years that I'd been on this planet, not knowing what it was like for the Cubs to win a World Series. And all of a sudden that was wiped away. And so it was kind of an emotional moment. I had no clue that the cameras were there. I'd kind of crawled off to the back alley behind the bar. And one of the producers, I spotted the camera kind of tail end of it. She's like, can we please use that? And I said, yeah, sure, absolutely. So that got into the show too. But yeah, you're right. Like there was just like some really cool moments that I was just lucky to be in the right place at the right time and to get all that stuff recorded, you know, to have forever.
I'm afraid that I am, because see, I've never disliked the Cubs. I've never had a problem with the Cubs from afar, and like, you know, I always kind of rooted for them, even though that wasn't my team. But the thing I always had so much empathy for with the Cubs was, you know, everybody had a story like, well, my grandfather lived his whole fucking life wanting this World Series and he didn't get it. Everybody like their dad, and I'm afraid that's going to be me with the Bears. Because see, the Bears were I was 5 when they won Super Bowl 20. I've got all the games. We could do a break them down. Let's watch the fucking post game from week 7 if we want, you know. But it's not the same as watching it through the eyes of an adult. So that moment when I literally, when I was watching that, I just for just a split second pretended what it would be like to have that adulation if the Bears would finally win the Super Bowl. I mean, obviously we came close in 06. Up 14-6 and fuck. But I don't know if I'm ever going to get there. But to live through your moment of seeing the Cubs, I was so jealous as a Bear fan, thinking I'm never going to get that. I'm going to be this old fucking Bear fan, just like the old Cub fans who never got it. And I just hope that doesn't. I hope it doesn't happen.
Yeah, I agree, Dan. I'll tell you what. There's never been a time in our lives as Bears fans outside of 1985 where we should be optimistic. I think the future is bright for this team. It was an incredible draft class this season, surprisingly incredible draft class. And with Justin Fields, I know you guys started to talk about him before or earlier, and I'm sure there's going to be some more talk about Justin Fields, but I think with him behind center, the possibility of a Super Bowl is realistic again. You know, and I would have been right there with you just a few weeks ago in thinking that this team, the way it's run organizationally, from a management perspective, it's just very unlikely that this team could ever win anything again. But I think for me, that's all changed. And I think our future is pretty bright here. Another funny thing, too, about 85, right? So you mentioned being 5 years old in 85. The shittiest thing of my Bears fandom has to do with 1985. So 1985, or it was technically 1986, correct? So the Super Bowl was played, what, end of February, early March, end of January. 86. So my first memory as a human being on this planet, and this is like definitely like a parlor trick that I do with people. Not really a trick, but asking the question, like, what's the earliest memory you have, physical memory? And for me, sadly, my first memory as a human being on this planet, I was almost 3 years old, and the space shuttle, I think it was called the Challenger, explodes.
I was watching that live with my mom.
Tragic event, same here. So I was in my living room with my mother, and I'm almost 3 years old, so I'm like 2 and change. And I don't know what the heck's going on, but this for me is like the most traumatic thing I've ever seen in my life. My mother's crying. I don't know why. There's all this commotion on TV. Well, that event was, I think, like a week after or within the week that the Bears won the Super Bowl. So I came this freaking close to my first memory on this planet being a Super Bowl championship. Can you imagine how cool that would be when your life starts on that note? But instead, I got the other, a tragic event, and not something that I'm making light of, but just in the sense of like how it's crazy how like these events, like how you remember certain things and how you miss, with an eyelash, I missed seeing and witnessing and feeling that Super Bowl, and it kills me.
Aldo, if you don't mind me asking Mike another question here, I don't want
Go
to
for
take
it,
up
brother.
all the time.
No, you're doing great.
As a Bear fan, I want to share a quick anecdote and then get your answer, Mike. Throughout my lifetime, I've just been so passionate behind a certain player and just really believed in him. And in '88, there were all these trade rumors for Jim McMahon because when he got hurt in New England, suddenly Tom Zach's doing fairly well. And I admit that when I was a kid, I hated Tom Zach and didn't even realize that he and McMahon were friends and got along. And I have so much respect for Tom Zach now, but as a dumbass kid, I just thought he sucked or whatever. But I wanted so badly the Bears to get to that Super Bowl in '88 because I just thought it would somehow legitimize Jim McMahon. He would, there would be no trade. And I wanted it so badly for Jim. And then fast forward, the same thing in 2010. I just wanted it so fucking badly for Jay Cutler. Or even before that, everyone was saying Rex is the worst quarterback in the history of the Super Bowl. So I was so wanting Rex to just fucking get MVP, come out, tell everybody to go fuck themselves. He had already told them that they were idiots in the press conference the week before. So I was so emotionally invested for the player, even as much as the team. And it's so monumentally disappointing, like to tie it to you, like the 2016, that Monday night game to start the year, week 2 against Philly. And, what happens? Jay throws that pick again, just the stupid ass pick that Pernell McPhee's yelling at him on the sidelines. And you just know that it's over then. And it's not, I guess what I'm trying to say is, or ask you is, what would you say, because we're all Bear fans here, that you were emotionally just so invested in or disappointed in? Because we've got 30 years as Bear fans of losing, essentially. So what sticks out to you where you're just like, oh, fuck? What's the most emotionally devastating to you?
Yeah, I think it's got to be the '06 team not, making it all the way, and maybe even more so the fact that Urlacher didn't get his ring. I mean, there's a guy that, he left it all on the field for his entire career. And then he doesn't even really get to end his career technically here. He doesn't get that last season as a Bear. But I felt, especially when we beat the Saints in the NFC Championship game, a lot of the imagery of him holding up that NFC trophy, like I just felt like, all right, this is his moment, and we're going to win this Super Bowl, and this is going to be, his achievement. And like I had all these comparisons to '85 with that team, right? In the sense that it was an incredible defense. Emotionally, being at the NFC Championship game, there were moments there at the end. I think it starts snowing in the fourth quarter, right? Like just
Absolutely,
like 1985 when we beat the Rams, right? And like everything just seemed so parallel. And I wanted Urlacher to get that, like, so that it could kind of be the crowning achievement on his career as a Bear. And obviously it didn't happen. That was as that team started to sort of get broken apart. That was for me when I was kind of thinking, are we ever, going to get a championship again? And what good is there if Brian Urlacher can't get a Super Bowl here? Who can?
I had so many hopes for that because if you recall, after that Super Bowl loss, there were so many reports that said Briggs was gone. Briggs was definitely gone. He was going to either Washington or San Francisco, wherever he was leaving. And then out of nowhere, he signs a 6-year extension, or what felt like out of nowhere, because there were so many published reports that said Briggs was going to be gone. So I'm like, man, they've kept the band together. Briggs is coming back 6 years or whatever. And you said Urlacher still in his prime at that point. It just felt like there was more work to do. The '07 team was going to be right there, and then they trade Thomas Jones
right
for nothing. And you bench Rex after week 3. Maybe that was the right move. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. It's a shame that '07 team following the Super Bowl, because '05 and '06 and '04 looked like it could have been good before Grossman got hurt and then they had no quarterback, but the defense was so steady. it's a shame that how quickly it just fell apart.
Yeah, not re-signing Thomas Jones was a huge mistake. I think they had a lot of faith in Seth Ben, and this, he's gonna, but they had to, right? Because they spent a high draft pick on the guy, so they, even though they knew he probably wasn't the guy, they had to try to make him the guy, a la Mitch Trubisky, right? But that was tough. That was a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, well, in the 2019 season, after the 2018 season, where we get to the playoffs, we lose because the kicker misses an extra, misses the field goal attempt.
And he fucking made it on the one that didn't count.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so the expectations for that 2019 season were so high, and then we end up 8-8, which is, sort of along the theme of what you guys are talking about, which is the following year, after some success, albeit limited, you end up, falling flat on your fucking face. And that is kind of the history of the Chicago Bears. I mean, I was in my mid to late 20s for the 1985-86 Super Bowl Bears team. And the expectation by myself and everybody else in Chicago and throughout the NFL was, okay, this is a dynasty type roster. This team should win multiple Super Bowls. And it didn't happen. And it didn't happen. I mean, we can do, a series of shows as to why it didn't happen. And Dan did a outstanding special on that about a year ago that you can find here on the Barroom Network. But it is so Chicago, like, Mike, you can talk more eloquently about this than me, but it's the Chicago Cubs. They win their World Series after 100+ years, and the expectation is, this team has a roster that they're gonna win a couple of more at least, and it doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's sad that I think we've, as Chicago sports fans, become numb to that.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, Dan.
I would think that
we expect that.
For Mike or any Cubs fan, I would think that you're set for life now. Like, you don't even need to be stingy. Like, if you were told today, I'm assuming that the Cubs will never win another one in your lifetime, you're like, fuck it, I don't need to know. We got 2016.
No,
I don't know that. So I'm kind of torn on that. You know what? Because like I want them to win. Like I am being a bad fan when I'm saying that I'm torn, because like in my heart of hearts, I want them to win every year. And I'm disappointed. I'm pissed off if they don't make the playoffs, or I'm pissed off if they lose in the playoffs and they get bounced like the Cubs did last year and barely got hit in the series against Miami. But Dan, you have a point. Like, part of me, like when I go to sleep, like I can sleep now, right? Whereas in the past, I'd be pissed off and I couldn't sleep. And now I kind of can. So you know what? Like, there is a little piece of me that has peace because I did get to see it. And Aldo, you mentioned there's a lot of people that they didn't see it their whole life. Like, we saw stories after the Cubs World Series of people that like listened to the game on the radio at a gravesite with a relative, so that they could experience it with them. Like, all those emotions. So like, we got it, right? Like, I can sleep at night knowing that we won, but I still get pissed off when they lose. And I would be a bad fan if I said I was okay with them never winning again. So I'm not going to say that.
Yeah.
Well, what I'm saying is I would trade that. If you told me somehow if there was some way to do this and say, well, Dan, the 06 Bears are going to win the Super Bowl, but they're never going to get anywhere near there again in your lifetime. Will you make this bet? And I would take it.
No. Tell the devil no. Because here's my thinking.
I just want one, man. I was 5 when they won Super Bowl.
Why not 2? Why not 3? And I say this as a guy during the Michael Jordan era for those 6 NBA championships. I watched every single game. When I couldn't watch the game live, I had my old VHS machine recording the game, and I'd watch it, and I'd sit through the video glitches and watch the fuzzy pictures. And I loved that moment in Chicago sports history. 6 NBA championships in 8 seasons. That was the culmination of my fandom as a Chicago sports fan. This is what I've always wanted. I wanted the Cubs to win multiple championships. I wanted the White Sox to win multiple championships when they won their title with Ozzie Guillen managing. I wanted the Chicago Bears and every team in Chicago to win multiple championships. I wanted that domination that other cities have had with their sports teams. Why settle for just one? I don't.
If I could respond to
please,
that, please. I told you I grew up a Cincinnati Reds fan because again, the Reds are closest to me. I could hear them on the radio. I could see them on TV. So, the Reds to me, and I know this isn't a Red show, but if you can just indulge me for a second,
please.
They went through so much losing after. You could say, well, Marge Schott was an anti-Semite and. She had the praising Hitler and all this stuff, and she had to get rid of the team. So, okay, she's a bad person. But when Marge was the owner, the Reds were always competitive. So from basically 1996 on until they got Dusty in 08, they were just horrible. I mean, just fucking horrible. And I could still watch the game and be happy because I always had 1990 in the back of my pocket. They could never take that away from me. I always had that great NLCS against Pittsburgh in the World Series where they swept Oakland. And it's like, I wanted them to win. Like when Dusty's another person. I know Cubs fans feel so, for some reason, they're against Dusty. I'm so wanting Dusty, who I think is a great manager, to get that moment. I wanted him so badly last year when the Astros are down 3-0. They come back and they're in Game 7. I want them to get to that series. They had a 5-0 lead in Game 7 in 2002 when he's the Giants manager, and they fucking lost that game. The Nationals, the Reds, everywhere he goes, he wins. The shit happened with the Cubs in 2003, as you all know. All these weird things happen. Dusty's not playing, but everywhere he goes, that team wins. And I just want him so badly to get. So my point is, when the Reds, for example, had a 2-0 lead on San Francisco in 2012, best of 5, 3 games now at Great American Ballpark, and they lose all 3. I really care, don't get me wrong, but what gave me solace was that, hey, got 1990, man. I can live another day. I can root, I can be happy, but I'm not as crestfallen as I would be if this were the Bears, thinking I'm never going to get there. So that's my perspective.
Go ahead, Mike. You follow that. I'm just going to get upset at
it. I do agree. I do agree to a degree. Okay. I do, because you don't know if you're going to win. Right. And I think for small market teams, and Cincinnati Reds, I'm not saying they're a small market team, but
no, they
when you experience
with the Cubs,
sure. And so I think even more so in that case, it's tough. It's tough to compete with the payrolls of the Yankees, or the Dodgers, or the Cubs, year in and year out. The Cardinals, year in and year out. So when you've had a taste of it, you appreciate that. And I think there's a lot of people that would give up a lot in the future to have something today, just in general. And sports championships are something. That's a true fact.
He gives up.
That's a true fact.
Anyway, go ahead. My bad. Go ahead.
Trying to save his job. But in sports, like winning a championship, there's nothing else like it, and a lot of people haven't experienced it. And so, if your one experience of the Bears winning the Super Bowl is when you were 5, it's a very different memory than as an adult, when you take all the pain and sorrow of the years since that championship, and you just want that victory. Like I don't disagree with Dan. I understand where he's coming from, and part of me would do the same thing. If you told me the Bears will win one Super Bowl, Justin Fields, one and one only, but you're guaranteed to get that one only, and then nothing for the rest of your life, I'd be tempted to take that deal. I'm not saying I would, but I'd be tempted to take it, because the taste of that victory would be so friggin' sweet after the last however many decades we've
They only got one with Favre, and it looks like they're only going to get one with Rodgers. And
well, let's not compare ourselves to that.
30 years of Hall of Fame quarterback play out of that franchise, and they only have 2. So all I want is 1. I mean, if we could get more than 1, then so be it. It'd be like Aldo and I are going to the Cleveland game. If we have a great dinner on Saturday night before the game, and I don't have any alcohol in me, that's still a great dinner. That second Super Bowl might be a couple of drinks after that dinner. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have to have it. It would be great, but it doesn't mean that it's going to ruin that first. I just want the first one. Just give me the fucking first one, and I'll be happy. I swear to fucking Christ, I'll be happy.
No,
all those years of losing will matter or make it seem like it was worthwhile. Like think about the 2016, the games that you all were filmed at, and I'm sure you've gone to hundreds of games, but that one season was highlighted. Like I said, you had that Philly game where Jay throws that interception. You've got the Green Bay game when you and Mark were talking about how you were dressing to go to the game because it was so cold. Mm-hmm. And out of nowhere with like Matt Barkley, the Bears look like they're going to beat Green Bay. And what happens? Rodgers beats us at the end with the Hail Mary again. Yep. I mean, how much disappointment came with that Jacksonville game? How the fuck did the Bears lose? What was it, up 13-0 in the fourth quarter, and they lose to Jacksonville in Chicago?
The Tennessee game too, where I think the Bears caught four passes the entire game, or three.
Josh Bellamy, god damn.
Yeah. It was a rough season to sit through, and there were games where it was like, oh man, we have to go out there just to be filmed, and it's like an embarrassment. Like, they're filming us with our heads in our hands in between our legs in the seats, just getting annihilated because you had to drink to put up with the agony of that 3-13 team. But I don't know. I mean, it's tough. It's certainly obviously a polarizing topic and question of, would you take the one title to sacrifice the future? And I don't have an answer to that. And I think both of you guys do. I'm probably in the center of that, leaning a little bit more towards Dan's direction. But, it's interesting to see some of the comments in the chat, and you can kind of go back and forth to the extremes. But I'd love to taste the championship again, and I'd be willing to pay a price to do it.
Guys, I can tell you that having lived through the 1985 championship, I used to say the same thing. Please, God, just one. Give me just one. And here I am, 95, 05, 40 years later, and I'm pleading, please, God, just one more. Just one more. I'm going back on my word. And Jesus is probably, I'm the one to blame because I said, just give me one. And Jesus is now saying, not until you die will they get another one. So I'm the one to blame. So Dan is probably going to have me killed off in Cleveland.
No.
He's going to come into
the bedroom. The Bears have never won a game where I've attended. So if they lose, I'll blame myself for it. It won't be you.
No, but I'm saying a championship.
I know. I don't even know what to say, man.
This motherfucker, we're not going to win until Aldo dies.
That season that Mike...
I'll pay for the scuba team to hang out at Lake Erie for you.
There you go.
I think that 3-13 year is a perfect microcosm of being a Bears fan. I hate to say that. That's why I don't hate the Detroit fans or the Lions. But, because I said I empathize with their losing, and the Browns as well, because if you think all the losses we've had as fans, and again, I'm not trying to play the victim card here. I'm just saying that season is almost a perfect one to film because it shows the loyalty of the Bear fan despite all this shit. And that one season isn't, I mean, it's the worst one that I can recall. There were a couple 5-11 wins and a 4-12, but 3-13 was the worst. But still, even that, that's the perfect one maybe to film to show the loyalty despite all the losing. So in that regard, and I'm sorry you had to go through it, Mike, but at least that's the one on record. Like if you get that payoff later, you have all that proof that you were there and loyal during that 3-13 debacle.
Yeah, we didn't miss a beat. We never do. I mean, Mark and I both. It doesn't matter how cold it is. Doesn't matter how bad the team is. We enjoy just being there and being with Bears fans on a Sunday morning at 6 a.m., 6:30, when the cars start to line up. The parking lots don't even open yet, but the cars start to line up. People get out of their cars, start cracking those first beers. And I mean, that's all part of it. It's that experience. And I remember, my parents were season ticket holders since I was a little kid. They had the tickets in the 70s. They were, at every game in 85. But I remember going to my first games and sitting there in what used to be the old the McCormick lot, and just sitting there. And Soldier Field was a palace to me. I mean, that was, literally church, right, on a Sunday morning, and just spending your day there, and including the traffic, to and from, and sitting in traffic, thinking about the Bears game or going home and stewing over the Bears game, whatever, right? It's all part of that. And so it doesn't matter to me. I don't care if they're bad. I don't care if, well, I do care if they're good, but it just doesn't matter. Being down there on game day is an experience that is like nothing else in this world. And I'm lucky to have sort of inherited these tickets from my family, but it's part of my life that is like right up there with anything else.
Well, let me ask you before we end up losing you here, because we've had you for 45 minutes and I appreciate your time, and I'm sure Aldo does too.
Absolutely.
Going back to that documentary, have you all been able to, obviously you and Mark are legit fans, are friends. Have you been able to maintain any relationships that you developed as a result of that documentary, like the First Down lady, or do you all stay in touch? Do you see each other at the game? I mean, was all that sort of just dramatized for the actual show, or is there any validity to like a bond at the stadium there?
No, that's real. ESPN did a really good job of helping kind of bring us all together during a lot of the casting piece. And we all knew each other because, we all sat in the same section. A lot of people were, let's say 10, 20 rows up. So you knew them, but you didn't really know them. And during the filming, they just really kind of brought us together for a lot of pieces. And we are friends to this day during the season and out of the season. I mean, we text with each other on a regular basis. How are things going? The Tonsils, some of the best people you'll ever meet in your life, their entire family, everybody's there for the tailgate. They all sit in different spots in the stadium. But some of the nicest people, the best people that I've ever met. We've got Tracy, the First Down lady. We've got Keith Kinsler, Sue and Sylvia, like everybody. We are in group texts, emails. Our beer vendor, like we are friends with our beer vendor in the off season. Terry, we stay close with Terry. We've had Terry over for parties. So the show did a really good job of sort of bridging us together.
Really good.
What's that?
The beer vendor, he did an excellent job with the voiceover work.
He did, and I wish there were more people watching that picked up on that, or he should be doing that full time. I mean, he was so good with those voiceovers and doing the narration of the entire series. If anybody hasn't seen it, I highly recommend going to YouTube and just Google "We the Fans Bears" just for Terry's voice, just to hear how he tells the story of Bears fans. And he was the damn beer vendor, and it's funny. They didn't, at the beginning of the series, they didn't think he'd be in the show, and they didn't even know who he was. And what they started to recognize was all of us had our own unique personal relationships with Terry. And for Mark and I, the relationship was we give him tons of money during the game and he gives us tons of beer in return. Mark and I were the drinkers of the group. Still are, and probably will always be. But anyway, ESPN was like, this is kind of cool. Like, this guy needs to sort of be put into the plot or into the story. And they started talking to him, and they heard that silky voice of his. And one of the producers had the idea, let's make him the narrator of the story and kind of have everything sort of flow out from his point of view. And they did an insanely good job of that. So again, check it out on YouTube. And I just wish more people saw that and could spread the word, because Terry should be a full-time narrator in some way. I mean, I could see him working for NFL Films someday, right? Doing the old Harry Callis, calls of NFL Films. But I don't know. We'll see.
Well,
I agree. He was solid, man.
He can come over here and narrate any of our material. That would be pretty cool. Hey, Mike, before you go, two things. Number one, tell us about Deep Dish Teas, how that business got started, and what was your vision for it? Who are your partners and so forth? Give us the background on it.
Yeah, so Deep Dish Teas is it started as a side hustle of mine. My full-time job is more than a full-time job. I'm the head of sales with a technology company here in Chicago. But one of my hobbies on the side is doing design. And so I'll do little designs and, in Photoshop or whatever. And one day I decided to start putting them on t-shirts, found a company that would help me distribute the t-shirts, manufacture the t-shirts. And Deep Dish Tees kind of just grew as like an at-home side hustle. A good friend of mine from high school is sort of my co-founder of Deep Dish Tees. I mean, he came up with the name. He and I are both into design and have talked for years about how someday when we grow up, we're going to start a company, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. It was always kind of along these lines, right? So that's how it started. It's been about 2 years that we've been sort of growing the business organically as a side hustle. And I guess the most recent, very exciting thing for Deep Dish Tees is partnering up with the Barroom Network to be the official swag shop for the network. So if you guys go to deepdishtees.com/barroom, or just click on the Bears or the Barroom Network tab at the top of Deep Dish Tees, you'll see some designs for most of the shows on the Barroom Network. We've got hats, we've got t-shirts, we've got sweatshirts, we've got mugs, all sorts of stuff to satisfy your apparel needs for Chicago sports, Chicago nostalgia, and most importantly, the Barroom Network. So check it out.
Hey, I got a question for you outside of the 2 questions that I said I had. We don't have any Dan and Aldo Bear Their Souls swag yet, because I've been fighting that. Who wants to walk around wearing a Dan and Aldo shirt? 2 weird names. One is a super common name, and the other one is a weird name. I mean, what's your professional opinion? Should we come up with some Dan and Aldo Bear Their Souls, or should it just be Bear Their Souls or Bear Your Soul, or what? What's your opinion on that whole thing? And then, Dan, I'd love your thoughts on this too.
Well, I say you leave it to the listeners. I say you give the listeners an assignment here and have people put together some sort of a design or a logo, or submit their thoughts. There's probably some catchphrases that would go over pretty well. But yeah, I think we could get creative with some different things, but that's my suggestion, is go to the listeners and see what they think.
I like that. What do you think, Dan? Should we start marketing swag for this particular show?
I feel like the most important thing is to not have any, and I'm not trying to sound homophobic in any way, but I think you're less apt to buying a shirt that has a man's face on it. I really believe that to be true. I think about wrestling for just a moment. The T-shirt that was so big 25 years ago almost now was the Austin 316 shirt for the WWF, and it didn't have Steve Austin's face on it. I mean, it did on the back because he was all bloody or whatever with Brett, but the thing that sold was it said Austin 316. If they just put Steve's face on it, it's less apt to selling, because no one wants to buy a guy's fucking face except maybe the Backstreet Boys and 10-year-olds.
No, Che Guevara, all these political heroes. There's been plenty.
Well, that's different. We're talking politics. We're talking about football here, though.
I don't know.
Dan, you've obviously not seen the Bobby Bombs flex picture on the Barfly shirt, so you got to get you one of those.
Then if I'm wrong, I'll eat it.
We've already gotten one request, and that is people want a Dan's Sex Life T-shirt. With the light bulb. We have this graphic that we use when you talk about your sex life. So that's
humiliating. Well, let me tell Mike.
I think that's got potential.
Right.
I have a small anecdote here for Mike. And this is true. Again, to use Phil's old vernacular, I'm not blowing smoke when I say this. Again, if you just understand the culture of where I grew up, everybody here is Pittsburgh fans, maybe Carolina, maybe Washington, but overwhelmingly the Steelers. So when I saw your documentary, for me, there was there literally wasn't a Bears Barroom yet. So in 2017 when that aired, I was like, wow, there are other people that are just there that are Bears fans. And it sounds stupid to say now. I've been on Twitter, for 10 years or whatever, 12 years, whatever. But the point is, like, I felt like that was the first time, even though I didn't speak to you until now, you and specifically Mark, I felt like I wasn't lying to you when I was talking to you on Twitter. I was like your fans, man. Like, it was the first time I met like other Bears fans, even though I didn't actually meet you. So it was a cool thing. And then when I heard Phil and they had Akeem Hicks and Kyle Long on here, I was like, man, this is awesome. Like, I had never met other Bears fans. So that's part of my attraction to that show and to wanting to talk to you and wanting to talk to Mark, because it's legitimate. Like I said, I didn't know any other Bears fans. And I know that sounds crazy considering you're surrounded by them. But again, it's meaningful for me to talk to you, though, for real.
Yeah, it's awesome to hear that. And I appreciate the kind words. And what might sound even crazier is I didn't realize that there were that many Bears fans either. And I sit around 60,000 of them, 50,000 of them on Sundays. But I had no clue what Bears Twitter was. Like, it just wasn't like on Twitter. I didn't realize all the social circles. I didn't realize that there were other podcast networks. I didn't realize that there was this whole community of people on the internet outside of Chicago. So, and for me, you were a part of that, right? So like every fan that interacted with us during the series and after the series was my bridge to where I am today in these social circles online, right? So like I don't get to Barroom Network without that bridge. So it may sound crazy, but it's sort of a mutual thing. Like I didn't realize that there were all these Bears fans out there either.
Well, that's cool, man. And last thing I'll say is I offer this to everybody, and Aldo can back me up. I mentioned this to Mark online, 5 years ago, whatever it's been. I've got all these games recorded, and Aldo can back me up. Like, they're legitimate, and it's the original broadcast, and I don't ever seek money for it. I'm not violating any copyright laws. If anybody's listening, I'd never ever ask for money. So if you or Mark or somebody else wants some games, needs some games, I can hook you up.
Well, maybe we kick it off with a watch party in Cleveland.
Ooh, that would be awesome. I like that idea.
And I love
that conference room. I love it.
I love Cleveland. When I heard you guys talking about Cleveland, it's a great city to go to for a game. Mark and I actually went back in 2013 when the Bears beat Cleveland.
That one wanted to go. I didn't go because they had the lake effect warnings. But Jay came back and threw those touchdowns at the end of the game. Phil Emery said, quote, Jay showed he had stones that day, and that's when he knew he was going to re-sign him. So you can blame that Browns game on it. Although I was a Cutler fan, I love that game. That was my favorite win of the season.
Yeah, it was a hell of a game. It was ice cold out there, freezing cold. The wind was whipping off Lake Erie that day. And we had a blast. So I think this season, the game in Cleveland is early in the season, so we should have better weather, right? What is it, October?
Are you going to be there?
Week 3?
Mike's going to be there.
I'm now considering it.
What was that, Dan?
I was going to say, I hope that I can shake your hand, or I'm not trying to be political again. I don't know if we're allowed to shake hands by September. I assume we would be. So I'd like to meet you and say hi. I hope, all jokes aside.
I just put up the graphic of Dan's sex life. That's why he's laughing.
I hope to maybe get to Pittsburgh too. I don't know 100%. You said Bobby Bombs is going to be at that. No, it's Buffon's going to be at that game, right?
John Buffon has told me he's making plans to go to the Pittsburgh Steelers game, which is right. Is it after or right before
It's week 9.
Okay.
It's week 9. That's a 4-hour drive for me, but that's Cleveland 6. So Pittsburgh is much more conducive to me just going and coming back the same night, which would probably be what I do.
Yeah, that was the one game on the schedule I was hoping would be early, because I think the Steelers have had the most tumultuous off season. I mean, they lost 5 of their last 6 games, including that playoff game. And then, all the Roethlisberger stuff, you look at the additions and subtractions in their roster, that's a team in turmoil. I would have loved to have seen that game early in the schedule.
Don't count them out.
No, I'm not counting them out.
Rebound somehow.
Right, but I think that the best time to play them in Pittsburgh would have been early in the season, but it is what it is. We'll beat them in Pittsburgh in week 8.
The Bears have won after Urlacher got run over by Jerome Bettis in 2005. After that, Jay Cutler beat him in week 2 in 2009. We beat him, Jay Cutler, on Sunday Night Football in Pittsburgh in week 3 of 2013. And then don't forget, Mike Glennon beat him in 2017, week 3 at Soldier Field. So what I'm trying to tell you is the Bears are 3-0 in the last 3 times against Pittsburgh. So.
Mike, my last question before we let you out of here, and thanks for being so gracious with your time. Dan and I are now going to talk about the possibility of Justin Fields being the starting quarterback week 1. Would love to get your thoughts on that before we let you go. What do you think are the prospects? What are you in the camp of definitely not? Let's give him time to rest, or whatever. How are you feeling about that?
Well, I think we have to see what happens in camp, and if Justin Fields is head and shoulders QB1 and the best quarterback, then I think he should play. I don't think you keep him on the sidelines just to keep him on the sidelines to watch a shitty quarterback. But that being said, let's say he's neck and neck with Dalton, then I play Dalton. I don't mind Fields sitting and learning if he can learn. Now, if he's in a situation where he can't learn, I don't want them to sit him just to sit him. So I think you obviously have to see what happens in camp. And I would be making a guess right now if I said, well, I think if they should start him or they should sit him. I'm going off of no knowledge or no information. I think you've got to see what happens in camp. And I'm for them making sure that he has a steady, gradual growth and development. But I'm starting Nick Foles day one.
Stephen Me says he started Nick Foles.
If that guy's still here in September, we have problems.
Yes.
But that's my philosophy, is you just you see what happens in camp. If they, if Justin Fields is a better quarterback, let him start day one.
Great. All right. And then one last thing. Can you give us the 20-second response to the collection of helmets that you have behind you? It's been a topic of discussion in our Slack room. Neil Stopchinski has been wondering about it, and now people in the chat room are talking about it, saying it's really cool. You've got, it looks like most, if not all, of the NFL helmets behind you. Can you tell us the story behind that?
Yeah, I should have mentioned this when we were talking about Cleveland, but those are the helmets from every stadium I've been to. So it's both college and pro. Somewhere around here, I have a label as well with the score of the game, the date of the game, and the stadium name. So it's sort of kind of a collectible. Anytime I go to a new stadium, I like to bring something home. And for a long time, these just were sitting in storage in a big box. And I finally had I guess the approval from my wife to go ahead and throw them up on the wall. And I think they look pretty nice. They're in order, right? So from top to bottom, left to right of when I attended each game, the Bears is the first helmet you see up there. And the Broncos is the last one.
Very, very cool. And finally, for those people listening on our audio podcast and want to follow you on social media, let them know where they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, so I think on all social media platforms, same tag, same handle. I'm still learning what that's called. At Mike Schaefer, SCHAEFER 14. You can find me on Twitter. That's where I'm probably most active. Instagram, Facebook, wherever you like to do your social media-ing, I'll be there.
Very cool.
I got one more question for Mike, and I swear that we can let him go. All right, if Mike, these are the 4 games that stick out to me in recent times that hurt me the most. I just want to know if you could number them, and you're from least to best. You know what I mean? Like, what of the 4 I've got, I'd like to know your thoughts on what hurt you the most to the least. Okay. Losses, because I like to commiserate. As Mike North said, I need to get over this shit. I'm trying.
Yes.
Okay, the loss is Super Bowl 41. The NFC Championship loss in 2010 to the Packers. The Week 17 loss to Green Bay. The Randall Cobb play in 2013. I'll just go with 3. There you go. The 2 Packer games and the Super Bowl. Those are the worst losses in modern era for me as a fan.
Yeah.
Probably the worst one for me. I think the one I took the hardest was probably the 2013 Week 17 game. I don't know why, but I think that's the one that's the only time ever Mars saw the remote. And that's a reference to Shane, who said he used to always break his remotes. I threw a remote, and my wife at the time yelled at me and told me that I was a fucking idiot, and she was right.
Yeah. Really good question. Very difficult to answer, but I think I've come to like a very solid answer to that. So least painful, this might sound crazy, but it was Super Bowl, because I didn't think we had a chance, to be honest with you. I thought Peyton Manning was just going to torch us. and I had no confidence in Rex. So that's going to be my least, even though it was disappointing as hell, right? But it's out of these three, that's the least. The middle one, I'm going to go week 17. That one was really, really painful. But losing to Green Bay to go to the Super Bowl, to go to a Super Bowl that I knew we had every opportunity to win. We play Pittsburgh, we win that game. I think at that time it was the night game, so we knew we'd be playing Pittsburgh. That hurt so friggin' bad. And they were winning that game. Like, I'd already put myself in the Super Bowl. I was already there, like winning, like thinking about how it would be to hold that trophy. I have the whole deal. So for me, that's going to be the most painful. Week 17's in the middle, and it kind of pains me to say that the least painful was the Super Bowl loss.
I know you got to go. I wanted to say when we had Thomas Jones on 2 times, I've been dying to ask him, do you think, and I loved Grossman, I did, but if they would have benched Rex at the half and put Greasy in, do you think the Bears beat the Colts?
No.
The game's close. It's not like they're getting blown out. Rex threw that pick 6 to the guy that would end up going to the Bears. What was his name? Hayden. Later in the fourth quarter. So they were down 19 to what? It was 22-17 in the fourth quarter. Yeah. So you think if Greasy's in, maybe the Bears steal that one?
I don't. I think if they run the ball more in the game, they have a better shot. It doesn't matter who the quarterback was, but if Thomas Jones touched the ball more, then we would have had a shot to win.
Well, it's been my pleasure talking with you, Mike.
Yeah, Mike, you are great. We're very lucky to be associated with you, Deep Dish Tees. You're great in so many different ways. Your dedication to charitable works, your professionalism, your commentary on the Bears, the Chicago sports, and so forth. We couldn't express our appreciation enough. So thank you, first of all, for being a part of the Barroom Network, and secondly, for being on Dan and Aldo Bare Their Souls.
Hey, it all means a lot, and it was fun being on with you guys. We should do this again for sure. Dan, thanks so much for inviting me. Aldo, as always, thanks for having me. You guys have a good rest of the show. All
right, brother. Take care.
See you guys.
Man, that was good. That was a good call on your part, Dan Aguirre, inviting him on. You should be a talent scout or something like that.
I knew I wanted to talk to him about that documentary because I did watch it when it aired. And like, I wasn't lying or placating him. Like, again, that was my first taste of other Bears fans. I mean, that sounds crazy to you all because you're from there. But here, like I said, I'm just surrounded by black and gold, the Steeler fans.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that in a future show about your existence out there in West Virginia. Not only that you're surrounded by fans who don't give a shit about Chicago Bears fans, but also the kind of the political climate there and so forth. We'll delve into that into one of our summer shows much more. But we've got a lot to talk about regarding the Chicago Bears. We set the stage with Mike, regarding this whole issue of the number one quarterback. I've frankly have been vacillating on what the Bears should do regarding the number one quarterback position, but I want to play this video from Chris Sims' video podcast. He was asked this question about, whether Fields should be a starter or not. The question is in this clip. And let's listen to his response and then react to it.
Well, here's one on the Chicago Bears situation, what they're looking at this year. Jimmy 1010, isn't the Fields-Dalton situation identical to the Mahomes-Smith situation a few years ago? Fields could sit this entire year and get the coaching that Sims thinks he needs.
Yeah, well, it is. It definitely is. I think there's a lot of things you can look at as a parallel to that. Now, the other thing I think that's a little different, at least, Alex Smith is better than Andy Dalton was at that point of his career. Alex Smith is, going to be the number one rated quarterback, I believe, that last year in Kansas City. And listen, I will still sit here and tell you, I know it's easy to sit here and go, well, look, they did it with Mahomes and it worked out well. I have zero doubt if they started Mahomes as a rookie, they still would have made the playoffs.
Yeah.
Maybe not the number 2 seed like they were with Alex Smith that year or whatever, but I have no doubts that they still make the playoffs. And that he still has a year where we go, that was pretty awesome. That was just a rookie.
Yeah.
I know we're all like after the fact, so smart and like, see, they did that. That worked. I mean, yeah, it was good. But I don't know. Who's to say if he didn't play as a rookie that second year, he wouldn't have thrown for 58 touchdown passes and been that much better? Yeah. I think that kind of gets swept under the rug in that conversation at times too. And, you could get away with doing that a little bit more in Kansas City because of where the team was at. Like Chicago, I feel like you might be a little more antsy because you're like, all right, we're not really a Super Bowl team yet, so let's get this guy out there and get him playing. Right. Where in Kansas City, they were still like, no, we're kind of good. Like, this is awesome. We got Mahomes, but Alex Smith has been good, and we might come out of the AFC this year.
Yeah, there could be some growing pains that could mess this up for us. Right?
Yes, yeah. Right. So that's where I think it's a little different from the situations are concerned as compared to this Bears one.
I think he makes great points here, Dan.
No.
Tell me why.
I'm gonna use a Phil Atoshin, and again, this is homage to Draft Dr. Phil. So I'm calling Chris Sims a fraud on this particular issue. First off, there are two different situations. Alex Smith had been in Kansas City, and this is off the top of my head, it could have been 2012, but I'm fairly certain it was 2013. So either way, we're talking about 13, 14, 15, 16, 5 years in the same system for Alex Smith. This also is Andy Dalton's first season in our system with this coach. Two monumentally different situations. And we're talking about the first overall pick in the draft of 05, Alex Smith, a guy that had gone to the NFC Championship game with San Francisco, had been in the playoffs every year with Kansas City. Andy Dalton is a guy that's never won a playoff game. These are two completely different situations. I'm not shitting on Andy. I'm really not. I've been a detractor, but not anymore because he's our guy now. Fuck it. I mean, he's probably going to play at some point, albeit week 1 or week 10 or somewhere along the lines. He's probably going to get in. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm his fan now. But I think they're completely two different situations all together. You got the different coaching staff for Andy, new system for Andy, new system for Justin Fields. I just don't see the similarities in it at all. And I think from the Bears' perspective, the reason they didn't fire Matt Nagy or Ryan Pace, arguably, whether we liked it at the time or not, is they don't think that they are too far away from a Super Bowl. I think if the Bears could tell you the truth, they would say to us, our defense is okay and can get better, and what was holding us back was Mitchell Trubisky. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if it's all should go on Mitch because I need Greg Braggs here to yell at me. But I think the Bears think that. I think the Bears think if Andy Dalton goes in there and plays the way they wanted Nick Foles to play last year and didn't, that they think our defense could carry us to win the NFC. I think the Bears think we can win this year. So I don't agree with Chris Sims' premise to say that the Bears are far away from the Super Bowl. Maybe they are, but I don't think they are. And the two situations of the quarterbacks, not similar at all. Not.
That's the only thing I disagree with Chris about, that the Bears are not a Super Bowl caliber team. I think that they are a Super Bowl contending team if certain things go right, of course. If they're, I won't get into all those bullet points, but I agree with everything else that he was saying, is in that the situation is different than, and I think you and I heard slightly different things from what Chris was saying. What I heard him saying was that the Bears want to follow the KC approach, but he's saying that Patrick Mahomes, if he would have been the starter, that team would have been a playoff team. And I think he is saying that Justin Fields can come in and do just as good a job or a better job than Andy Dalton. And so, yes, he thinks that Andy Dalton should start, but at the same time, there is enough evidence, there's enough thinking going on here that Fields can be the starter and that he can lead this team to victories. That's what I heard him saying, but you're telling me that that's not what he said.
I thought that the way they lined it up, and again, maybe I'm wrong here. Maybe my predisposition to not like Chris Sims shows its ugly head here. Maybe that's me being biased. I felt that they were trying to say that the Kansas City situation was analogous to the Bears situation, and I just don't agree. Like I said, Alex Smith is in the system there already a good 5 seasons, already won some playoff games. Andy Dalton's never won a playoff game, and he's in his first year with the Bears, just like Justin Fields.
Right.
So those two situations don't line up. I think they're not congruent in any way other than the fact that Andy's older in his 30s like Alex was. But so what? Other than that, nothing is the same.
I totally agree with everything that you said here. So here is Matt Nagy being asked a question about reps, because that's the most important thing. Whoever your number one quarterback is, they need to get reps. And this team is facing it's in a conundrum, because Dalton needs his reps. And if he's really the number one quarterback, then it's going to be really hard to develop Justin Fields. So how are you going to deal with that? This is Nagy on that.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's that's something that Bill, myself, and Flip are going to talk about, which we've talked about already, because we want to have a plan when those guys get in here, is making sure that that Andy, like you're saying, for the first time he gets in here, that he's being able to get in here and do what he needs to do. He's essentially like a rookie as well. So he's going to get a good amount of reps on the front end, and then with Justin and Nick, we're going to work through that whole process and discuss it with those guys, and really just let those guys. I think the way you all can look at this for us moving forward here the next several weeks is there's going to be a lot of class on the grass and mental for these guys. So we'll try to do some breaking the huddle and learning some different tempos that we have and the mechanics of that without doing a whole lot physically. So the next several weeks will be very mental, and reps will be included there. So we're going to put that all together here tonight.
What? I can hear you snorting already, because you hate everything that comes out of that man's mouth. How did you, I mean, I interpret that as, yeah, this is a fucking problem. This is a huge problem. And that's why I feel like if Justin Fields is mastering the playbook, and you ask him, okay, what is split 5, 34th, triple sets, whatever the fucking play call is, and if he can recite it, and then he goes out on the grass after the class and executes that play over the next few weeks before training camp opens, then I'm saying, dude, you are the number one quarterback, because I want you to get 85% of the snaps and the rest go to Nick and Andy. That's what I'm saying.
You know what I think is the best comparison for our situation? I think it's the Dolphins when they had Ryan Fitzpatrick and Tua. I think that because Ryan Fitzpatrick, if he wasn't in his first year with Miami, he was in his second. Mm-hmm. I don't think he had been there very long, but still he's a veteran kind of the ilk of Andy Dalton, where he's had some good regular season games and is capable in theory of winning you some games, because we can't discount Dalton has taken the Bengals they took the Bengals to the playoffs several times. I don't know exactly. They didn't win any games, but still he did it. So to me, the way Miami handled the situation early on, I'm not saying I even agreed with Coach Flores on it, but if they started, Fitzpatrick like 5 or 6 games and then turned it over to Tua, I think that is what probably will transpire in Chicago if things go the way they want. But like you said, if Fields comes out on fire, then maybe he's Kyle Orton of 05, where you say, okay, although Kyle was a 4th round pick, but still he was starting in Washington opening day. And I'll never forget, that was September the 11th, which still was really close to like 0-1 at that point. So they threw him into the fire week 1 on September the 11th against Washington that day. You're a 4th round pick. Have at it, Hoss, and let's go. So maybe you do that with Fields too. But I still think that the Miami situation is far more on par with what we're dealing with as opposed to Kansas City.
Yeah. Okay. So you know how we are, at least I should say how I am when I'm listening to these press conferences. I'm trying to decipher everything that's being said, tried to read in between the lines.
Yeah, but he's not saying anything though. Matt Nagy is constantly like, it sounds like he's in Have you ever been in a deposition?
Yes.
Like I've had to do that because of my other job, taking 911 calls and stuff, all that. You're subject to civil, scrutiny. So I've been in depositions before, and you're always defensive, even if you're trying to project that you're not. That's Matt Nagy to me. It's like he's trying to get through it and not commit perjury.
I agree with that. And while it irritates the hell out of me, in many cases, I understand why he's doing that, because he doesn't want to give away a competitive edge. And now I wish that Chris Ballard, the Indianapolis coach, general manager, I wish and all NFL teams would look at him and how transparent he is in his press conferences, and that the NFL's communication teams should talk to the 31 other franchises and say, look at how this guy does it. You guys can do it the same way. This isn't fucking nuclear, national secrets and so forth. You can talk openly about certain things and not be so untransparent, because it's really giving the NFL, because this doesn't just happen in Chicago. Other NFL teams do it too. They are so untransparent that it just really is more irritating to fans than anything else. But my point is this: listen to Matt Nagy talk about Andy Dalton as the starter, and what I hear here is there's a possibility that the Bears coaching staff has already been talking about perhaps Justin Fields being the number one starter at the beginning of the season. And tell me if I'm reading too much into this.
Andy is the starter. Andy's going to get the 1 reps. And what we're telling Justin and Nick to do is make sure that they're doing everything they can to try to be that guy. And that's that competition part. And I know that for everybody, the biggest question is when is that going to happen? When you go up to draft a quarterback, like Justin, everyone's very excited and they want to know when. And trust me, we all understand that, but we need to make sure that whatever that plan is that we put together, that it's the best thing for the Chicago Bears. And I think the easiest way for all of us to simply think of this is it'll all happen for those quarterbacks. They'll all play however they're supposed to play, and we're all going to see whatever we're supposed to see. And then it's our job as evaluators of who they are, what their strengths and weaknesses are, to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make the Bears the best team possible. That's it. And there is, that want for all of us to be able to see what Justin can do. We'd be lying to you if we didn't say if we didn't say that or believe that. But we got to make sure as we go through this thing that we also do what's best for the Bears and for Justin, and so that's where I think as time goes by and we see how things go, we'll know and we'll all see it and feel it. And I think it'll be very natural how this process goes.
Here goes the question for you, Aldo.
Please.
Imagine this scenario. No one's talked about this. Imagine, let's say Fields is having, he's a rookie. He's an NFL novice. And let's say for whatever reason, he's not ready from week 1. And that's apparent. Let's just say hypothetically, not saying that's going to happen, not saying I'm wishing that, but let's just say he needs a little bit of, he needs the preseason and he'd be okay resting a few days, learning, blah, blah, blah. But what if Nick Foles is head and shoulders above Andy Dalton? Like, if Foles is still here, like, what does he have to do to not be the third quarterback? Like, what if he's so much better? He's in his second year of the offense. What if he suddenly, he performs the way they thought he was going to play last year and just looks that much better than Dalton?
That is like saying the Easter Bunny really exists.
But what if it could happen?
Well, if it does, then that's great fucking news. Here's the bottom line. I want the game week 1 starter to be the best quarterback, the guy who is playing the best, the guy who's got command of the playbook, the guy who has looked the best in practice, the guy who is firing up his teammates to play at an even better level than they have been playing. That's the quarterback. And right now, between those 3, I would say that it's improbable that it's going to be Nick Foles because
I agree. I was just saying what would happen though. How much would he have to outperform everybody to get the opportunity?
Well, he would have to not only look much better in preseason games, I'm sure he would have to suck Matt Nagy's dick. But because hey, he was on the roster already, and the Bears somehow felt the need to bring in another veteran journeyman, and not that Andy Dalton has played in a lot of teams, but journeyman in quotation marks, quarterback, basically saying, yeah, we don't really have confidence in Nick Foles. We looked at that tape, and despite the fact that he had no offensive line, it was clear that this guy was done. That's the interpretation I get out of why they went after Dalton and immediately named him as QB1. Because in my mind, a year or two ago, if you would have told me who's a better quarterback, Nick Foles or Andy Dalton, I would have said probably Andy Dalton, but I think it would be pretty tough. But that's not the case. That's not what the Bears are saying now. So
I think if Foles remains on the roster, let's just say hypothetically,
okay,
I think he is your insurance policy in the sense, let's say week 17 or week 18, you got to go to Minnesota and you need a win. And let's say, Dalton's struggling, Fields is hurt or something like that. You feel confident in, hey, without any playing time the rest of this season, this guy can go in and randomly win you a game. I think that he's your insurance policy in the event that you need a guy to win a game late in the season, maybe a playoff game. If, let's say one of the two guys gets hurt in the first quarter or something, he's your guy. You feel like, okay, he's like, to go back 30, 40 years, he's like Don Strock for the Dolphins. Remember Don Strock?
Sure do.
So there you go. I think if he's still here, his whole role is to come in and just provide CPR to the offense whenever it needs resuscitation.
Yeah. Well, and I truly believe, and Mike mentioned this, if Nick Foles is still on the roster, it will be a miracle. And those weren't Mike's words, but he sort of said that. He's not going to be on this roster. What is going to happen is somebody like Jared Goff, and I say this because Don Burr, the Lions fan, is in the chat room trying to create trouble again. But when Jared Goff gets injured in training camp, they're going to come calling for Nick Foles. That's what's going to happen, or some other team. And so he's a trade asset. And trust me, he's not going to get many reps. He's going to get as many reps as Tyler Bray did. And I went to,
oh, he's better than Tyler Bray.
Oh yeah, he is. But I'm saying in terms of reps and camp, he's not going to get more reps than Dalton, or the same amount of reps as Dalton and or Justin Fields. It's just no way. He's going to get 10%, if that, of the reps.
The best thing that could happen for Nick Foles and for us as Bear fans probably would be in the preseason. And I'm not wishing this on Flacco, but let's just say in a hypothetical scenario, Joe Flacco gets hurt and Philly needs a backup. Like that's where he should have stayed. He should have worked out a way to stay in Philly. He's a fucking hero there, and he should be a hero there given what he did. He beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl, MVP. That's where he should find his way back to, as the Eagles, for himself. Because he's always going to be beloved there, and he's probably going to be booed if he ever sees the field again at Soldier Field.
I agree with. And by the way, just as a quick aside, I got a couple of people in the chat room saying, "Are you guys going to stay on Tuesdays now?" Because I've been trying to look for you guys on Monday, and now I find out you're on Tuesdays. I think, and Dan and I haven't totally agreed on this, but I would like us to be on Tuesday nights. But that's something he and I need to iron out, and as soon as we do, we'll let everybody know.
Definitely next week, because I have an 8 to 4 shift on Tuesday morning, so I can't do late Monday night next week. So definitely I want to be here next Tuesday.
Yes. Okay. Excellent. All right. Now, as part of my thinking about this Justin Fields potentially being the starter for game one, I listened again to his press conference, and I pulled some sound bites that might again offer us a clue as to what is going on. And boy, oh boy, this guy was effing impressive. He did not give long-winded answers, and I appreciated that. The average response for his the questions asked, his average response was about 15 seconds, which, Mitch Trubisky would go on for 90 seconds and not really offer anything. And I'm not trying to denigrate Mitch, but give me some substance, even if it's 10 or 15 seconds long. But this is Justin Fields being asked if he wants to be the starter.
You're going to do everything you can to win the starting quarterback job?
Of course. I mean, I think everybody on our team should be striving for a starting job. And if you're not, then there's no reason for you to be here. So, of course, I'm going to do everything that I can to, get that starting job. And, it's really, it's not up to me. Coach Nagy, he has a set plan on, my development and stuff like that. But I'm just going to, work hard and keep my head down and just keep grinding it out every day.
Dan, could there be a more perfect response?
I agree. I'm feeling the love on that too. I thought of a good comparison. Now, keep in mind, I don't watch college football. So if their game isn't the same, then I confess my ignorance. But just looking at the body type, just on paper, just looking at him, he kind of reminds me of Cam a little bit. And I looked up Cam Newton's first game because he was a rookie, and immediately Carolina threw him into the fire. Now, the Panthers lost that game 28-21. But listen to these stats.
Okay.
Cam, opening day as a rookie, 24 of 37, 422 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. He was sacked 4 times, but still he threw for 422 yards. Mm-hmm. So to me, I compare him to Cam just because of his body type. He's a fucking huge guy.
Excellent
like seeing
comparison.
him out there throw passes. They both got huge fucking legs, big quads. They both can run. And I'm assuming from all the hype that Mr. Fields has a great arm too. So yeah, it kind of puts me in mind of Newton, although I hope he's better than Cam because Cam is a sore loser and melts whenever the team is losing. So I hope that's not Mr. Fields.
No, I don't think it is.
His body type reminds me of Cam, but looking at him standing is what I'm
saying. I agree with your assessment of him as a comparison to Cam Newton. And I think that one of the things that is comparable is the fact that Justin Fields will probably take a lot of sacks early part of his NFL career because one of the scouts notes on him was that he tends to hold on to the ball for quite some time. And so he wants to make a play happen. And so if he continues that type of play in the NFL, he's going to get sacked. And so that's something that hopefully the Bears will coach out of him, is get rid of that ball much quickly than you did. But that also kind of plays against some of his strengths. One of the things that he would do is hold on to the ball because of his escapability and help receivers get open and then hit them in stride. His accuracy is phenomenal. So that's a really important part of Justin Fields' game. I got another soundbite here. He was asked, are you comfortable with the plan that Matt Nagy has put in place for your development?
I'm very comfortable. I think, it's very important for the players to trust the coaches and the coaches to trust the players. So, whatever, Coach Nagy has, planned for me, it's what I'm going to do and what I'm going to follow.
What a great response. It's important to trust the coaches and the coaches to trust the players. I mean, you cannot have scripted that any better. That is, those are the words of a leader.
I hate to say this, but this is my honest opinion. And again, it's not even week 1 yet. So maybe I end up looking foolish later. And I like Trubisky. I did. I never got the sense in the 4 years that Mitch was a Bear when he spoke that he had the confidence, like I wanted him to get it, but he never felt like he spoke with the certitude that, hey, I'm the fucking man. And when I listen to that kid speak, I feel like he believes in himself like beyond anything Mitch ever believed in. And maybe that's just an opinion and that's just foolish, but I do believe when he talks, I'm like, when I'm listening to him speak, this guy's got he's got that it factor.
Right. One of the things that on the old 100 Proof show that Shane Marshall and I would talk about and agreed on was that Mitch was repeating things that he read out of leadership books. And the Bears,
I remember that, the book. Yeah, he read the lead to learn how to be a leader.
You're right. And the Bears were giving him more than just one book. They were giving him multiple books because they clearly thought that he didn't. Well, I'm not saying Matt Nagy clearly thought that he didn't have those leadership traits. And so they were trying to instill those in him, just like Adam Gase did with Jay Cutler. We know the story about Jay Cutler not being a great team leader. And if you're going to give Adam Gase credit for anything that he did in his limited time here in Chicago, is that he got Jay to start thinking differently about his role as a quarterback. It's not just about slinging it. There's that great moment in NFL films where you hear Jay Cutler on the sideline talking about Brett Favre. Yeah, Brett would just throw it. He didn't give a shit about anything. Man, how cool is that? Well, the NFL has changed now, and the quarterback, because of the emphasis on that position, has to be a leader. They have to, and Jay didn't get that until late in his career.
Yeah,
he had to motivate people.
He was 32 when Gase was here, so I think just natural maturity lined up with that too.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Here's another soundbite from, I got two more, this one and another one. Here's another one from Justin Fields talking about command. What has he been told about what he needs to do? And his response was to have command of the playbook in the huddle. Here's his response.
Justin, Coach Flip talked about sort of getting you to show command right out of the gates in these early stages. I'm curious, through your eyes, how do you define command as a quarterback?
Yeah, it's just, calling the play call with confidence, having a loud voice, and just really taking control over the whole offense and, really showing, your teammates and, the people who are out there on the field with you that, you're the guy out there, that you have full confidence in not only yourself, but your teammates. And, even if you do make a mistake, you make it at full speed. So I think that's, a couple of ways to show that, you're the guy out there and you're doing all you can to get better.
I love that response. He is, and notice when he made the response, there was no hesitation. He like knew that question was coming and he had a ready response. And I know, Dan, that you're not watching the video part of this yet, but he's got his fist clenched and he's with emphasis hitting the palm of his other hand with every sentence that he makes. I'm falling in love with Justin Fields. Like I started the show by saying it still had not hit me that he was a part of the Bears. I had no expectation at all that the Bears would have an opportunity to get him, and that they did get him, and that who really is this guy other than the guy that had this tremendous game against Clemson and was a highlight machine in his Ohio State games. Now that I'm getting to learn more about him, I'm like, holy shit, we might really have a franchise quarterback in Chicago. Holy shit.
I share your enthusiasm. It sounds better and better with every soundbite.
All right. Here's the last one. This is Adam Hogue. Adam has the question in here, so I won't set it up.
Hey, Justin, even going all the way back to high school, I mean, you've always kind of been in the spotlight from a highly publicized recruitment, Georgia, Ohio State, now at the highest level. How ready do you feel for all this attention that's coming?
Yeah, I mean, just like you said, I've been, kind of in the spotlight since high school. So I kind of feel like I'm, made for this. I'm built for this. So it's nothing new to me. I'm just going to continue to work hard and continue to get better every day.
Love it.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
It's great. I actually went back and looked at some of his high school highlights, and holy cow, was there a presence around this guy? It's sort of like, that thing, that feeling that you get when you're looking at somebody and they walk into a room and boy, this guy commands the room or she commands the room and so forth. That's how Justin was as a high school football athlete. And it continued on to his college career. And now it hopefully will continue with the Chicago Bears. I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled about the possibilities, and it's great to be a Chicago Bears fan again. Now, when Mike was talking, he said, there's a lot of reason for hope. There's also a lot of reason to be a little bit skeptical. The aging defense, the fact that Matt Nagy is head coach. I mean, let's remember, Chris Sims was talking about Patrick Mahomes being, could have been the starter as a rookie with KC, but they went with Alex Sims because they thought they were kind of Super Bowl ready. Well, what stopped KC from going to the Super Bowl that year? It was Matt Nagy, his play calling in the playoff game. He just abandoned the run. And if they would have run in that game in the playoffs, they probably would have gone on to the next divisional opponent and maybe gone all the way to the Super Bowl. And so, Matt Nagy is kind of unproven aspect.
You're right. You're so right. But just to defend Nagy for just a moment, just because he's our coach, that's the only reason I'm doing this. Kansas City historically, I don't remember the score now, but they had, do you remember the Frank Reich game against the Oilers when he was at Buffalo and they were down 35-3?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Kansas City had a similar game with Andy Reid as coach, with Alex Smith as quarterback in Indianapolis against Andrew Luck. I'm going to say it was the 12 season, maybe 13 in the playoffs, and they were down 30 and Andy Reid blew it. So he's had a propensity to maybe it's Alex Smith's fault, maybe it's Andy Reid's fault, but he's had a propensity to blow these games, even going back to his days with Donovan McNabb, blowing playoff games. They lost 3 straight NFC championship games in McNabb's early run before going to the Super Bowl. So maybe it's Andy just as much as it was Nagy that one particular day, because Andy was letting Nagy just do what he wanted because maybe that's what he wanted. Like he agreed with him.
I'm with you. That's a good point. Joe O'Donnell in the chat room says, do you really think Nagy's job is on the line this season, or did drafting Justin Fields buy him another year? What are your thoughts, Joe? I mean, Dan.
I think it depends on, like, if for some reason, they come out there and the Bears are really awful and the kid doesn't have any progress, then maybe you can make a story. But I think if Fields plays well, or if the Bears as a team play well, then sure, he's going to buy himself more time. Real quickly, I looked up this game. January the 4th of 2014, the Colts 45, the Chiefs 44, and the Colts at one point led the game, looks like 38-10.
Oh.
And they lost 45-44.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, in Indianapolis. So yeah, Andy Reid has done this before. I mean, like I said, that's right up there with Frank Reich and Warren Moon's game, but you kind of forget about it.
Absolutely, it's a good point. And I'll answer Joe's question regarding Nagy. I do think that Bears ownership has said, listen, we're going to give these guys time. They came in and convinced us that they being Ryan Pace, made a mistake in drafting Mitchell Trubisky, and that they gave Mitchell every opportunity to exceed, although they really didn't. They didn't give him the offensive line that he really needed. But and Nagy was slow to adapt to Trubisky's strengths, albeit limited strengths. But nonetheless, I think that McCaskey and the Bears management have bought into the plan that Pace and Nagy presented to them, which was, let us work on getting a young quarterback and let us develop them. And the fact that Nagy is now collaborating, there's that word, collaborating with Ryan Pace on who that quarterback should be, then that's going to buy them time. And Dan is right that barring a catastrophe in the season,
if he gets hurt or something, I'll be crying like Dick Vermeil. That's the catastrophe,
right? But I think that they could have a losing record this year, but still retain Pace and Nagy if there are signs that the team is trending up, that there are signs that Justin Fields is the answer, and that all the other draft picks that they've made during the last 2 or 3 years, when Nagy has been on board and has had an influence on those draft picks, if those players are playing well, the Darnell Mooneys, et cetera, et cetera. So I do think that right now Bears management is leaning more towards giving these guys time, barring a catastrophe.
I've been thinking about making a collaboration between my hand and my dick.
I did that last night, by the way. Man, oh man, did I have a nice heart on.
Every time I hear them say collaborate or collaboration, it makes me roll my eyes. I swear to God.
You know what? The thing is that it's the right philosophy to take, that there should be collaboration. But what is stupid about it is that they agree upon that as a communication point, and they repeat it so much that it becomes a punchline. And again, I get back to, communication teams with organizations, corporations, sports teams, and so forth. They need to advise these guys, cut it out with the fucking collaboration nonsense. It's become a punchline here. And so that's part of the problem. But as a philosophy, it's a good thing.
I could be wrong, but I wouldn't be surprised if I was right. If we went, and this would be like torture, like we would not want this assignment. But if we cut through some John Fox press conferences in 2016 or 2015, wait a minute, he came in 15. I bet you at some point he was speaking about collaboration with Ryan Pace. I guarantee it's in there somewhere. We've been collaborating with this gruffy voice, I guarantee he said it somewhere that they've been collaborating.
Yep. Boy, there was a lot more that happened during rookie mini camp that I wanted to tackle, but I didn't have enough time to collect some of the sound bites. So hopefully we'll do that next week's show, and there's going to be more activity going on at Hallis Hall that you and I can tackle. But one of the things has to be Daz Newsome saying, boy, I thought there were Waffle Houses all around the world. Where do you people eat at 3 a.m. in the morning? That has to be like the soundbite of the year, and it's only May. So that was pretty cool.
I hate the Waffle House, by the way.
I've had it. Every time I go down to the Senior Bowl, I stop at a Waffle House because they're known for their breakfast, and it's like I don't see what the appeal is here. There's some good dishes, but the waffles are like paper thin for one thing, and so I don't see what the appeal is.
I was in Columbus, Ohio, at a music festival called Rock on the Range, and we went to a Waffle House just because like White Castle was too fucking crowded, and we were too tired because we walked from the hotel,
Mm-hmm.
And I swear we sat down and there was a fucking roach on the table. So we just got up and left. We didn't even, they'd already given us drinks. They were like, fuck it, man. Let's just leave.
We are being,
there was a roach.
Go ahead.
I was saying there was a literal roach alive on the table.
Oh no.
So we didn't even pay for our sodas. We just got the fuck up and left.
That reminds me of something. There used to be when I was a teenager, 16, 17 years old, I was dating this woman who loved, I say woman because she was a couple of years older than me, and she loved to go to this seafood place by the Chicago River. And she loved a couple of the dishes that they served there, and it was a takeout place. And so I kind of fell in love with a couple of dishes too. And so one day I went by myself, and I'm in line waiting to make my order, and there is a rat the fucking size of my Macintosh, bigger, because the tail was like, and it's scurrying around in between the fish in the freezer. And I was mortified, first of all, because as a kid growing up in New York, in my apartment building, there were rats the size of Volkswagens throughout the entire building. And I would go to bed and there was rat in the corner and blah. I could get more morbid, but this is all truthful. So I was mortified, and I said, should I warn other people, or should I just slowly walk out and leave this place and never come back? And to this day, I regret not telling people, hey, there's a rat in the fish there. Everybody get the fuck out of here. I just watched off for myself and I walked away. I'm burying my soul. I feel guilty about it to all those people who probably suffered food poisoning because of my lack of proper discretion, my lack of proper judgment. I'm very sorry.
Yeah, early in my youth, we grew up beside of water like that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And like early grade school years, we always had rat problems, which is just mortifying because
really
like
is.
if you have friends over and they see a rat, I mean, you automatically are looked at as just scum. And the worst thing, my mom always was pissed at me for watching stand-up comedy. Again, it's so weird. Like I could watch horror movies, but Eddie Murphy Raw was like fucking out. Like there's no way, you better not have that. So I had Eddie Murphy Raw on VHS tape and I had to hide it. And I remember opening up a drawer like to get my Eddie Murphy tape out, and rats had shit on it.
Oh no.
So thankfully, by the time I was a teenager, we'd gotten a house, and that wasn't a problem anymore. But it's demoralizing. It's absolutely the most. It's one thing to grow up poor, because a lot of times when you don't have a lot of stuff, you don't really know that at the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Other than when you're in school, like if the kids have better shoes than you know that because they let you know.
Yeah.
Like kids that had the best Jordans were always dicks about it. You know, if you had Nike that wasn't Nike Air, you were a fucking bum. You might as well just been wearing, Clyde Drexler's Avias or whatever. But other than that, you didn't necessarily know that you were poor. But man, those rats.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, like I said, that's the most embarrassing shit ever.
I've got a million rat stories. I'll share one real quickly with you. My in the late 70s and early 80s, the thing, at least in our neighborhood, is that on Friday you would buy an ounce of marijuana. It cost about $40. And so you got your paycheck on Friday and you'd go see your local dealer and you would buy an ounce. So on someday that weekend, I go to my brother's house and he tells me, man, I got a question for you, man. I saw a rat inside my ounce of marijuana. I don't know how it got in there. I had it on the floor and a rat crawled in there and so forth. Do you think we should smoke it? And I said to him, where are the rolling papers?
Oh my God.
I'm sorry, if we're going to smoke it, who gives a fuck if a rat was intermingling with the marijuana?
You just never know. Those fucking rats, they shit little pellets. I mean, what if it defecated on the weed? Couldn't that make you sick somehow?
Well, I'm still alive. So. All right. We are about 45 minutes to the close of the show, and I want to turn our attention to everybody is dying to hear about your sex life. Do you have anything to report on it this week?
Man, I like I said, I'm working 84 hours this week. I worked 70 plus last week. So no, I haven't had time to do anything. I haven't even had time to beat off. So that's unfortunate. I need to set some time to sleep, to work out, and for fuck's sake, I need to masturbate.
Yeah, at the very least. Jeez, oh, jeez. I wish I could remember the new porn star I found on YouPorn or Pornhub. I don't know which site I went to, but fell in love with her and knocked out a couple. But this segment is about your sex life. So
did I tell you the story where there's a real porn actress in my house?
No, share, please.
This is true. She works. I'll tell you her stage name and stuff so you can look her up in a second. Let me just tell you the story. So my wife at the time, Marissa, worked at our mall, and she was the manager at a jewelry store.
Mm-hmm.
So and before that, she was like at Route 21 or whatever, a department store. So she knew everybody. Plus, she was very affable anyway. So she knew everybody locally at that time. And so my buddy Antoine and I are at work, and we grew up together. My buddy Antoine's got like a fucking 12-inch cock, by the way. That's true. But yeah, so we're at work, and we're finding out that one of the officers' sister-in-law is in porn. And I'm like, get the fuck out. They're talking about some amateur shit. They're like, no, this is real. So as fate would have it, that officer ended up in the building that night.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked him, like, what's the story? They're like, oh man, it's true. Like, she's working at, there's a strip club. He tells me all the intimate details. So there's a strip club that she had been stripping at, doing her thing. And at least here, I don't know how it is in Illinois. You see everything here, the vagina, the tits, the ass.
Mhm.
Like, if you didn't see all that, why would you want to go? I don't know why some states like preclude you from seeing the vagina. Like, well, fuck, count me out. But so at some point she got offered this porn deal, and they would pay her $5,000. They would fly her to Los Angeles. I don't know what airport she got, if she had a connecting flight. I don't know that shit. But they flew her ultimately. Some way she got to Los Angeles. Or Van Nuys, I think, is where they did it.
Mm-hmm.
And they flew her to Southern California, paid for her meals, her hotel, and her flight back, and $5,000. And basically she got her guts fucked out for like 4 days.
Oh, Jesus.
And of course she had to sign all these waivers, like, that we can make is you can use your image, your movie, and profit from it, and there's nothing you can do about it, all those things.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, she has been at my house.
Oh my goodness.
And at one point I bought her DVD. Now I'm going to tell you this title.
Okay.
I do not have a butt fetish. I truly don't. And I don't mean like, looking at ass. I mean like sodomy. I don't have a, but that was the theme of this porn. And I bought it just because she was in it.
Okay.
And I told Marissa, I was like, I need to get her to sign my DVD. She's like, oh, you fucking better not. She's like, don't you dare bring that up. But the name of the movie is Rock and Roll in My Butthole, Part 4. Part 4. The girl's real name is Ashley Whitaker, but her stage name is Jordan Shane. But she spells it Jordyn. Jordan Shane. And she's covered in tats. She's pretty fucking hot. Although she found God at the end of my marriage, which is kind of weird. And I always thought about that because when I was in school, like, kids were like their most ruthless in elementary school. If you were poor, if your dad was, having a mental breakdown, the other kids knew about it and they were going to hit you in the balls with it. So I can't, especially in this age where everyone has porn on their phone, like if you're in the third grade, they're gonna be like, your mother's a whore. Your mother's in porn and we can pull her up on the phone. Other kids know about it. She's got 2 kids. Like I said, it was in porn, a stripper, and she found God at some point, which is like, not that there's anything wrong with being religious, but don't lecture me on morality when you're in fucking porn, But yeah, anyway, she's been in my house.
Oh, I found the DVD cover of Rock and Roll.
Are you sure you got part 4 now? It's part 4.
Oh, okay. It's not part 4. Let me see if I can find part 4.
Or just Google Jordan Shane. Again, spell Jordan Jordyn.
Jordyn. SH.
Yeah, Shane, or not like Marshaw, because he had the Y in it.
Right.
Like Shane McMahon, I guess you'd say. Vince's son.
This is hilarious. Was she on the cover of Playboy?
No, I got the same thing when I was Googling it. That's not her.
Okay. Oh yeah, I see her. She's heavily covered in tattoos here. Yeah.
The name of the porn company was called Angel Fire, I think, something like that. They focus on ladies with tattoos. That's their theme. Burning Angel is what it's called.
Okay.
If you search Jordan Shane Burning Angel, you'll definitely get it, because that's the company that she worked for back then. Maybe still does. I don't know. Like I said, my wife and I are obviously not together. So I'm searching it now. This is a good radio, huh? But it's like, if you wanted a sex story, I'm kind of yeah, I found it. This is definitely her. I'm going to send it to you right now. And
I have it. I'm pretty sure this has to be her. But go ahead and send it to me. It'll confirm.
She dyed her hair blonde after this, which I thought was horrible. But yeah, the one I'm sending you is the way she looks in that film that I have. Okay. Like, that's a still photo from that movie. Rock and Roll in My Butthole, Part 4.
That's a great title.
I just sent you a photo. This is real. I've got the DVD. And the thing about it, it's like, I tried to come to it just because I knew her or, met her. So I thought that would be kind of shady and like duplicitous, like to go and run and jack off to her behind her back.
Yes.
But I couldn't even do it because she was in so much pain.
Oh.
And I'm not turned on by women in pain.
No.
Like the guy is just killing her ass. Now get this, somewhere during the movie, the guy like talks her into like judo chopping her own pussy. And she's got no pubic hair at all. So she's smacking her pussy like her fucking vagina is beat red. She looks like she's gone through a wrestling match. So the dude's fucking in her ass, no lube, just fucking killing her. And she's like crying. She's like, oh, yes, I like it. And she's ready to cry. She's like, she's like Dick Vermeil when Trent Green got hurt before they brought Kurt Warner in. And he's getting her to smack herself in the vagina all at the same time. And he's beat her ass so much, like his hands are completely almost tattooed on her ass.
Yeah.
And she's almost ready to cry.
Yeah.
And he's squeezing her nipples like there's no way she enjoyed any of this. And she's probably thinking at that moment, oh my God, this $5,000 for this? Fuck.
Well,
but
if you fuck Mike Schaefer, if you could bring her on to this show, I would love to interview her to get kind of, because I've heard stories of women who are into pain when they're having sex. Maybe she did love every second of it. And maybe she,
I tried to get her to be my Facebook friend, and she wouldn't even approve that. So.
Yeah, I've got a relative who was in the porn industry too, and I don't know what happened, but I was following her, and she was following me on social media, and I think that she either heard one of the shows where I divulged that she was in the industry, or she may have been told about it, but all of a sudden I've blocked from all communication with her. And I haven't been around family much the last 2 years, at least that part of the family. So I don't know what's happened. So I could be ostracized from her life, but it would be interesting to talk to a family member or somebody who is close to you in some way or another who is in the porn industry. So anybody out there who wants to come on the show, let us know. We'd love to talk to you.
Antoine and I found that Rock and Roll My Butthole Part 4, like this. The officer's name was Ferris, so I'll just leave it at that. Mm-hmm. And Ferris told us that story, and before the night was over, I had my order for Rock and Roll My Butthole Part 4. And I think maybe that's why she found out that I had the porn and just thought I was weird. Maybe I am weird. And I wouldn't even be my Facebook friend. So I can't make any contact with her. I can tell you because I've seen her around town, At least she used to drive a Dodge Challenger. So she did have a nice car as a result of her porn endeavors.
Well, there are women who and men, but mostly women who can make a really good dollar being in the porn industry. My hope for everyone involved in the porn industry is they're not being forced into participate in that lifestyle, and that they're having a good time and they're making a good living at it. So, because I admit, I watch porn from time to time, and it gives me pleasure from time to time. So, I think there's some value to it in society, although I'm sure a lot of people are saying, Aldo, I'll never, ever listen to a word that you're saying again based on that opinion. All right.
I can't imagine a karate chop to the vagina being pleasurable, though. I'm not kidding. I mean,
I agree with you.
The shit out of her vagina.
I agree with you. And there were laws against that type of filmed sexual behavior, but I don't know what's happened if they've loosened those laws up, because it has to be the way I read about it, this was many, many years ago, is that it has to be clear that it's just role playing and that nobody is getting hurt. But I have seen some porn videos where I'm like, this is way too fucking much. He's hurting her, or she's hurting him, or whatever it is. And that's to me, I find that unacceptable. But
yeah, the last porn thing, because we, the clock's running and we want to get to TV,
mm-hmm.
but and I won't say his name. He's one of my good friends to this day, and he was one of my groomsmen. He likes that porn, and I'm not trying to, be racist here, but it's a subsect of Asian porn where they make the girl cry. Like, that's the thing. Like, they make her look as young as possible, so she looks like she's 12, you have to think she's 18 or she wouldn't be there. I don't guess anyone's that stupid. at least in 2021.
You would think.
And of course, they make her like, blow 75-year-old man and fuck her in the ass. And the whole time she's crying. And that's what gets him going. He likes to see the women cry. And to me, that makes me soft.
Well, Stephen Me in the chat room says Rock and Roll Butthole 1 is a much better movie, better script, and the remakes rarely work. And 4,000 Clover says not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 rock and roll in my buttholes. That is pretty incredible. Must have been a successful series if they did 3 sequels to it.
One of the other things I'll say about it just popped in my head. From one of the other scenes that doesn't involve Jordan Shane.
Mm-hmm.
The lady has a sucker in her mouth, like the whole time the guy's like going down on her and she's, you got the sucker in her mouth. At one point, the guy puts the sucker up her ass, pulls it out, and then eats it.
Jesus.
They did so.
All right, we got a half hour left on the show, and I have to take a piss. So I'm going to run a quick commercial break and take the quickest piss in my life.
Okay.
I only got a couple of commercials loaded here, and
well, let me just I'll tell another story.
Please. Okay, hold on. Let me put a great picture of you up on the screen. You tell a story. I'll be right back.
All right, guys. Here's a porn that you need to look up. And again, this is really in its existence. I have this as well. And this is just for sheer entertainment. I don't mean like, oh, I want to beat off to this. That fucking thing that they use on women when they get, they go to their gynecologist and they're checking them out. That fucking thing that makes their vagina real big. I don't know what that's called. But when they're getting their pap smear. So there's a movie where they get this lady on all fours, right? And she's got her ass elevated in the air. And they stick that thing up her ass and make her ass expand, right? So her asshole, imagine her asshole's, it's fucking gaping. And they pour Fruit Loops in her ass. They pour milk in her ass. And her friend, this lady, comes and starts eating the Fruit Loops out of her ass. And before the scene's over, now mind you, this is 50 minutes into their scene. It doesn't even look like they edited. There's sweat. There's fucking ball sweat. There's what comes out of a vagina. And anyway, so they're eating this out of her ass, and the guy's like, I can't take it, and sticks his dick in her ass and starts fucking her, and like milk and fucking cereal starts flying everywhere. And then the other girl and the girl that's getting fucked starts eating the cereal that's coming out of her ass. That is a Martin Scorsese porn, I'm telling you. That is a true story. I have that DVD too. I don't remember the name of it, but they're eating Fruit Loops out of her asshole.
Okay.
And again, that's not to make you come, it's to make you chuckle.
Yeah.
That's like,
clearly. 4,000 Clovers has asked the question repeatedly, so we must answer it. He basically really wants to know from you, who is your favorite porn star or stars?
When I was a kid, that one guy, because you'd have to, I assume this is the way it was for you too, Aldo. When you're a kid, you kind of rely on older people that will give you the porn.
Mm-hmm.
And like, VHS tapes and stuff were the thing in my day, so to speak. So I had a lot of 80s porn. And this guy named Peter North was in like every movie that I had.
Yeah.
I was like, this guy is a fucking star. I mean, I wish I were Peter North. This guy's slaying pussy. Mm-hmm. So as a kid, I liked Peter North just because I wanted to be him.
Yeah, he was, I used to listen to the Stern Show a lot, and he was a big favorite from those two guys. I've forgotten their names, Sal and his partner. They were huge Peter North fans, and his partner, what's the name of his partner? He had this, somebody.
You talking about Jackie the Joke Man?
No, not Jackie, but Sal and another guy.
Stuttering John.
No, not Stuttering John.
Fred.
No, not Fred. You're getting close. But anyway, he would talk about Peter North as if he was the second coming of Christ. That this guy was just so prolific, not only big, huge cock, but just massive amounts of semen and so forth. And, and Howard Stern would say, you would love to touch it, wouldn't you? And I got him to admit it. Yeah, clearly I'm fascinated by this guy's penis. So, that I think is a warning sign for all Peter North finds is don't watch too many Peter North movies. You might want to end up.
No, keep in mind, this was out of like, wow, that guy, he's really doing a good job. Not like, oh, I want to suck his cock.
So what about a female actor? Any female actors in the porn industry that are favorites?
Again, in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God, what was her name? I'll tell you the name of the movie now. It was called, oh God, this is really digging deep. I jacked off to this movie hundreds of times.
Hundreds,
man,
Holy
hundreds.
cow.
If my mother only knew, from 1985, let me find it, and the actress in it, I think her name was Amber Lynn or something.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. Amber Lynn was a big actress.
She had the greatest bush. And I guess I liked girl fur for some reason, man. It just looked good,
You're a bush man, not politically speaking, but sexually speaking, aren't you?
I didn't mind W, actually. I didn't hate him. But I mean, it's easier to go down on ladies that are bald, don't get me wrong, but like it just looks good on them. Like, to me, if a guy's got pubic hair, it makes me want to vomit. Like in the movie, like, dude, like,
did Peter North have a bush hair?
No, I think he was shaving his shit in the 80s. Like, Peter North was he knew what he was doing, man. Peter North is what kids call now a boss. I think it's Amber Lynn. The older lady that was in it too was really, really fucking phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
God, why is it not coming up?
Amber Lynn.
Yeah, Amber Lynn is her name, mm-hmm. And I think the woman's name was Hope Russell. But I swear to you, I do not have an incest like thing. In fact, I'm annoyed by that. Like every porn site is like, oh, I fucked my dad or my stepmom.
Oh, Dan, I'm so glad you brought that up because like I mentioned the other day, I went to a porn site and it's as I'm scrolling down to find a video to masturbate to, it's like so much of the stuff was incest. And it's not just a stepson, stepdaughter or whatever. It is actually mom and son as well. It's repulsive. I don't understand what the turn on is for anybody regarding that. I mean, that is if you're turned on by that, you should repress it. I am sorry. I'm not a psychologist.
I agree, but I just wanted to say the movie I was talking about has a pseudo incest scene. In the movie, Amber Lynn fucks her dad in the movie. It's a movie. It's not just a porn. It has a script and blah, blah, blah. It's like a 2-hour film or whatever. But to get back at her mom, because her mom has always like talked shit about her dad her whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And in the movie, her mom was sucking her boyfriend's dick. And she walked in the hotel and saw that's what she saw was the boyfriend's dick in her mom's mouth. So to get revenge, she goes and blows her father. But of course, her father and mom have been separated apparently forever. And her mom has always talked about how much she hated him, but it was like a revenge fuck,
Yeah.
And the guy that's her dad in the movie kind of puts you in mind of the guy that played Richie Aprile in The Sopranos.
Okay. Yeah.
That's what it looked like.
Well, and on the next show, we're going to talk about the Serbian film.
Oh yeah, did you find the unedited? Did you watch it?
No, I watched the edited version, so I'm not going to give my opinion based on stuff that was cut out because clearly the shock value of the film was edited out, and the one scene of the newborn porn scene was edited, and so I stopped watching then because I said, okay,
right.
Well, I'm not really seeing what the filmmakers intended to do. Although I will offer this. My preliminary thought on this is if they were making a political allegory about what is happening in Serbia, they could have done a better job of letting people know that this was a political allegory, because it wasn't until the middle of the film where they start talking about the politics of the country. But be that as it may, I want to talk about the HBO show Mayor of Easttown. You and I both watched it Sunday. And for those of you who are still with us, 2 hours and 38 minutes into the show, we are going
to
good
fucking show tonight.
Yeah, I think so. We are going to talk about some spoilers. So if you have not seen Mayor of Easttown and are against having things spoiled for you, or you have not seen the latest episode, then we wish you adieu. Thanks for listening. Dan and I are gonna get into it because what transpired this past Sunday was huge.
Hey, before you even say anything, did you see SNL did a parody?
Yes, I did see that. That was pretty funny.
And they were making fun of the accents, which I hated from the jump. So
yes,
funny.
Yeah, because it's an accent unlike any that we've heard.
No, Matt Nagy's got it. Matt Nagy says his O's like that.
Yeah, that is true. That is true.
Like you would say Cheerio. It's not a Cheerio, it's a Cheerio.
That's right.
We're home. Home.
All right. So why don't you set the stage first for those people who are still listening or watching and are not familiar with the story and don't mind us giving spoilers away. Why don't you set the foundation of what the show is about first before we start talking about the latest episode, Dan? Go ahead.
Kate Winslet is a girl that lives in a small town in Pennsylvania. She grew up there. She had some stardom because she was on a high school championship basketball team. And if you grew up in a smaller community, you know that those things tend to resonate with people, especially for football. But in this town, they call her, I forget what what is it? Something Hawk. What is it?
Lady Hawk, isn't it?
The Lady Hawk, yeah, because that's the name of the team. But she was the Lady Hawk because she made the shot. She was like Jordan against Cleveland and Brad, what's his name? Craig Elo. Craig Elo. Yeah, he hit the shot on Elo, former Rocket as well, by the way. But so he hit the shot that she hit the game-winning shot. So she's a town legend, and she ends up becoming a police officer, and she's worked her way up to detective, and she knows everybody. She grew up there, you know. Ultimately, we find out that there's a case that she's been unable to solve. That's like a year into it as we start the show, and that's a backstory kind of thing. And suddenly, we got this new character, a female, young, 17, who's trying to get her son tubes in his ears because they think that he's going to go deaf without them. She's got a shitbag for a baby daddy. And, you know, we see her struggle. Her dad's mean to her at the house. And this poor kid is a kid herself, and she's trying to be a mom. And the first episode ends, she's been murdered, you know, and it's kind of like a Twin Peaks feel where she's laying by some water like Laura Palmer on Twin Peaks. And so that's kind of like, who did it? You know, was it the shitbag baby daddy? But, it turns out he's not even the real dad. So who's the dad? And then it's pointing you like a whodunit for a couple of episodes. Well, eventually, Kate Winslet gets suspended as an officer because she's so desperate to hold on to her grandson because, see, her son had killed himself. She's gone through a divorce. She's gone through all this trauma, you know, and her son had a boy, and his baby mama was a junkie. So Kate's been raising this child since its inception, essentially. Mm-hmm. And is desperate to keep a hold of it to like rectify all the other things in her life that have gone south. She wants to raise this kid properly. And so she planted some dope on the baby mama, who's now coming around 4 years later wanting to be the mom suddenly. But her chief knows it's her, suspends her from the case. But Kate then starts connecting with Evan Peters, who you might know from American Horror Story, who's on the case. He comes in from another market, a larger like city in Pennsylvania, to assist because he allegedly solved another case, which we find out was an accident on his part. He's not really that great a detective per se. He's got a good heart. He lives with his mom. He's young. But anyway, he likes Kate, but Kate kind of doesn't. She's using him to stay informed because she really cares about these murders. You know, these two, Kate, the disappearing kid, and then we've got this one girl that was murdered. And as it turns out, it's kind of like a Silence of the Lamb thing. If you remember, Buffalo Bill had the basement where he was keeping the one girl. This sick fuck has got a basement where he's got, or some kind of room where he's got the girl from the backstory hidden. He's taken another junkie girl. So he's got two girls in there. And we found out that the one that was murdered also was hooking herself out to try to make the money to pay for our kid's ear surgery.
Right.
We didn't know this backstory yet. Well, eventually in this episode, and I'm going to let you take it over, but we find out who at least one of the guys is, because it's more of like, I think a couple of guys connected here that have committed like these heinous like child trafficking, sex trafficking things, including the girl's baby daddy that I was talking about. But so we get to the house, kind of like Jodie Foster in Silence of the Lambs, but it's Kate Winslet and it's Evan Peters, and they know because there's the Winstons, and this guy's suspicious, and he fucking shoots Evan Peters in the head and kills him. I didn't see that coming at all. I don't know anybody that watched the show that thought he was going to die. And it was like when it first happens, it's so quick. You're like, well, maybe it didn't get him in.
Yes. Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't in the head. I didn't rewind it yet because I was recording it onto DVD because I save these things, you know. And as soon as it was over, I rewound it, but they showed one shot of him laying there dead again afterwards. I was like, he's definitely gone. But that was a bombshell, man. That's why I didn't want anybody that I knew that watched it, my nephew or a lady that I talked to, you know, we watch it and stuff. I didn't want anybody to have it ruined. I was like, did you see the ending? And same with you. I texted her, like, what a fucking ending, because I didn't want to tell you in case you hadn't seen it yet. But the Evan Peters death and the fact that they found that shitbags, the child molester guy, that was big, man. The episode started out slow too, like as you would call it last week, a little bit of filler, but man, did it end with a bang.
Yeah,
I hope I satisfied you in the summary.
Yeah, outstanding job, Dan, as you always do with these things. I thought that this perhaps was the best episode of the entire series, and that there were it expanded the list of suspects in the crime, but it then also solved one aspect of the crime, which were the kidnappings of these girls. But what's still out there is this other crime, right? So
yeah,
nothing has been totally solved yet, and there's still 2 episodes left. But getting back to the Evan Peters shooting, this was really superbly done by the filmmakers. Like Dan said, throughout the last few series, you've seen this attachment, the Evan Peters character, to Kate Winslet. She's really not interested so much in a romantic relationship with him. She's just trying to stay informed with the case because she's been suspended for planting drugs on her grandson's mom's possession so that she could maintain custody of the kid. So he starts to share with he being Evan Peters starts to share with Kate Winslet why he's attracted to her, and there's a really great scene that after she has rebuffed him, that he shares with her his feelings towards her. You know, how do you know what I want? And he kisses
he
her.
gives her a fucking kiss, and she kind of liked it too.
And she kind of liked it, and so you start thinking maybe there's a future for these two. And then he gets shot. So we were expertly manipulated by the filmmakers there. You start to think that there's something going on between them and that they might have a future, and boom, boy, and the way, again, the filmmakers handled the shooting, he's clearly shot in the face. It was just so sudden and alarming and shocking. It was beautifully done from a filmmaking standpoint.
I agree. One other thing I thought that was brilliant in this episode is I thought it was initially a poor writing angle to be, let's kick the priest, because so many other movies have done that or shows.
Right.
But either way, you thought the priest was a bad guy because he dumped that bike. Mm-hmm. But this episode allowed you to get some sympathy on the priest because these assholes are taunting him.
Right.
And you find out that he was falsely accused of touching a girl early on. So he's so afraid because of this false allegation that he wanted to stay away from this case despite his knowledge, because he didn't want to ruin his career. And that's such, a human emotion to have.
Yes.
And so we went from thinking that he was a villainous fucking piece of shit to actually feeling sorry for him in this episode. So this episode had a lot of depth. It
really did. And the entire series has been outstanding. So those of you people who love crime dramas and you haven't seen it, hopefully we haven't given too much away. Zach Sullivan just popped into the chat room and he says, you guys are still going? I got hung up with some other shit. Yeah, we're still here, Zach.
Oh, you missed a lot.
Yeah, you missed a lot of good stuff, Zach. Make sure you go back and take a look at it on demand here on our YouTube channel, or at least listen to the audio podcast. We're in the middle of talking about Mayor of Easttown, a show that Dan and I both are really enjoying. It's HBO's latest crime drama in the vein of True Detectives. How would you compare it to True Detectives? Because you were a big fan of that show, right? The Matthew
I
McConaughey.
loved all 3 seasons.
All 3. Okay.
Oh, yeah. I love season 2 as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it compares to it in that regard, because especially with True Detective season 1 and season 3, it's non-linear and it's bouncing back and forth from time frames.
Right.
So in that regard, I don't think it's comparable at all, because this is happening in real time, with the exception of a couple of flashbacks that give you context.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that it's similar at all, with the exception of the fact that they're trying to solve a crime. This is set in Pennsylvania versus True Detectives in Louisiana and Arkansas and California. So yeah, I don't think that they're similar in any way. But before we go, I wanted to tell you of another thing that I watched this week.
Excellent.
That I think that you could like. I've only watched 1 episode, and the 2 have aired.
Okay.
On the channel Vice. You remember the DC Sniper from like 2002?
Sure.
Well, they have a show called I Sniper. Somebody, I don't know who yet, because I haven't watched but 1 episode. Someone had extensive interview time with the kid, the Malvo kid. And I mean, he's narrating the show. They've recorded like hours of conversations with him in jail.
Mm-hmm.
So they're mixing in footage of as it happened, and they're talking to people that knew the guy that manipulated him. The older guy, I can't think of his name, and they're showing like relatives of the victims, crime scene photos, and all in all playing like the DC Sniper kid underneath it. So again, it feels like something like Netflix would have done, but it's only on Vice. I mean, it's called I Sniper. So, and I remember that very well, and so only 1 episode in, but I definitely recommend it. It's got that, if you like true crime, as they say, to have someone had extensive interview time with Lee Malvo.
Hey, Dan, do you ever watch what might be considered or categorized as chick flicks, or television shows that are the primary audience are women?
I'm trying to think of one. I really liked HBO. On HBO, they had a show called Girls with Lena Dunham.
Yeah, that's. I think that's a good example of one.
Yeah, I was a big fan of Girls. I watched all 6 seasons as they were airing.
Yeah, the only reason I bring it up, and I think it would be unfair to compare this show that I'm going to mention with Girls, because Girls was much more intended for adult audiences. But there was, and I got turned on to this today or yesterday by my stepdaughter, Caitlin. She's watching this show, and I go, "What are you watching?" She goes, "It's called Younger. It was on TV Land a few years ago, and season 7 is about to start, which is the last season." I go, "Well, who's in it?" She goes, "Hilary Duff and Debbie Mazur," which a lot of people will recognize from the Scorsese films. Sutton Foster, and the premise is that Sutton Foster's character is a 40-year-old woman pretending to be 26 years old, because it's the only way she can get a job in the publishing industry. You got to be young in order to work in downtown New York publishing industry. And so she's faking away. So I sat down and I start watching a few episodes, and I got sucked into it. And as much as a chicky, flicky kind of feel that it has to it, it is good. So I would recommend it to you, is if you are dating somebody and she says, "Come on, let's watch something a little lighter," then take a shot at Younger. It's currently on Hulu TV. Was originally on it's an MTV produced show, but I'm not sure it's ever been on MTV. But it certainly started on TV Land, and season 7 is about to start. So take that for what it's worth.
Oh, that doesn't sound too bad to me. I do have to say the only thing that you've ever recommended to me and I'm not going to say it sucked. I didn't enjoy it, but I tried to watch it multiple times. Now, granted, I was busy at work and have to pause it and stuff like that, but I started it over twice. It was the one about that hotel. I just could not get into that. The one in L.A.
Yeah.
On Netflix. The girl I was watching with the work agreed with me. She's like, yeah, I don't know, something about this I don't like. And she normally watches shit like that with me there. But for some reason, I just couldn't get into that. But maybe if I was at the house uninterrupted, I don't know. I just could. Everything else I've pretty much liked. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
I couldn't get into that, though.
It's called Crime Scene: The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel, and I actually just turned up the Rotten Tomatoes page, and 50% of the critics love it. 50% disliked it, and 60% of the audience that saw it liked it, and 40%. So clearly, it's not for everybody. What appealed to me about it is the filmmaking part of the documentary. This is a true life story, and the way they shot things, I thought was really super. But after watching all the episodes, I think there was 4 or 5, I felt cheated by the storytellers because they left out like a lot of important information early on that would have led you to believe, okay, I understand what's going on here. This is bullshit. There's really not a ghost at this hotel. There's a logical explanation for everything that happened, but they kept deceiving us through all these episodes, and finally in the final episode they reveal that there's a logical answer for everything. So you did the right thing by probably not watching it all, although for people who are interested in filmmaking technique, it's definitely worth a watch.
Yeah, like I said, it didn't suck. For some reason I just couldn't get into it. And I watched as I got to wrap it up, I don't know how this was considered a dark side, but I watched the premiere of Dark Side of what is it called? Dark Side of the Field. I don't know. It's Vice's, like Jim McMahon's going to be on there. We talked about that.
Oh, yeah.
And I watched the first one, which was about Chad Johnson.
Oh, really?
And it felt like we're watching just something. They did have a lot of NFL footage in it, like the trailers didn't when they were promoting the show. But they do have reenactments that just have people in generic uniforms. Like if Chad's upset on the sideline and they didn't have a shot of it, they redid it like generically.
Interesting. Did that work for you?
But they have NFL footage. But it's kind of weird. Like it was like sort of like talking about the diva wide receiver, because it mixed in Burris a lot too, Plexico Burris, but it focuses on Chad. I'm not really sure, like the wrestling component of this same show called Dark Side of the Ring always focuses on like a tragedy. I'm not sure Chad Johnson's story is a tragedy, other than the fact that, at some point he wasn't in the league anymore. And for he and his family, that's a tragedy, but it's not like there was some, Burris' story is more of a tragedy that if you think about it, like a guy that shoots himself with the fucking firearm in a club and like ruins his NFL career.
Right.
That's more of a tragedy coming off winning the Super Bowl, upsetting the unbeaten New England Patriots, and shoots himself in a fucking club. And then Bloomberg wants to make his whole livelihood after you. So that's more of a tragedy to me. Yeah. But anyway, the first episode of that one, it wasn't bad. I just don't think it fit under the moniker of like Dark Side of the Field or whatever. But it did feel credible. It wasn't like you were watching something that was, just, oh God, these people don't know what the fuck they're doing with this show. Like I said, they mix in enough footage to where you could think that for just a moment, maybe NFL Network or somebody like that was doing it.
I apologize. I was listening to every word you were saying, but I just saw on television that the White Sox have lost in the bottom of the 9th inning. And I predicted that the White Sox were going to lose tonight, but I failed to bet the money line. I would have won a couple $100, but nonetheless, I did win money because I took the Twins plus the 1.5. So you don't give a shit about that. Nobody else gives a shit about that. But
but I do. I care that you care about the Sox. if I had more time, I would definitely be watching baseball, but I am a National League guy. So
yeah. Now, quickly, I know you got to leave, but Chubbs just joined us, and the first thing he says in the chat room is, "Did I miss the segment on Dan's sex life? Did I miss Dan's sex talk?" And yes, Chubbs, you did. PJ immediately responded saying, "Yes, you did." So, is there any way in 30 seconds, Dan, that you can?
I told him about a porn star that was in my house.
There you go, Chubbs. And that is reason enough for you to rewind and listen to the segment.
Jordan Shane, Jordyn. Jordan Shane is her stage name.
That's right.
She was my wife's friend. So I had a real life, and you can look up the movie Rock and Roll in My Butthole Part 4 because she's in that.
Yeah, it's Part 4, Chubbs. It's not
Part 4.
Yeah. There's been a Part 1, Part 2, Part 3. She's not in any of those. Shane is in Part 4, and you have no more contact with this woman, correct?
No. After, I wouldn't know. Every context of me ever being around here was because my wife knew her.
Well, that's a shame that you have no contact with her.
I told you I tried to be her Facebook friend, and she declined. So. But I mean, I've got her DVD, so I get it. She thinks I'm a weird. Masturbating to her. I tried. So I'm like Bill Clinton with the weed. I did try.
Chubb says, I agree. I'm going to go back and watch that. And
last story for you before I go.
Sure.
Because you mentioned baseball. I just want to acknowledge this real quick. The thing that made me a sports fan more than anything was baseball, actually. My grandmother, if I've told you this before, I apologize. My grandmother, if she would have lived, she loved the New York Mets the way we do the Bears. She would have loved the pay-per-view package, MLB Extra Innings. She would have watched all 162 if she would have lived. And she fucking loved Darryl Strawberry, Dwight Gooden, that whole fucking team that I didn't particularly like. But she got me into sports, me just being, hey, you're going to spend the day with your grandmother. Well, we're going to do it watching baseball. So my whole fandom of sports all goes to my grandmother. She's the one that got me liking sports. My dad likes sports okay, but my grandmother loves sports. And my first real vivid memory, like this takes the show full circle with what Mike was saying, like, his first like sports memory, or what his first memory in general was the Space Shuttle Challenger exploding, which I remember that vividly as well. But my first sports memory that really resonated with me, that I knew that I was glued for life in some scenario, was the 86 World Series with my grandmother, and watching that fucking game that the Sox have Boston has 2 outs, and they have a 2-run lead, and they're about to win a world championship, and Clemens has just finished the game, and they blow it. And that's the Buckner game. I was watching that with my grandma, and just seeing the enthusiasm. A lot of people forget that was game 6.
That's right.
They still had to come back and win game 7. But it's just to see, I was secretly going for Boston because I was just the heel, I guess. As a kid, I was 6 years old or about to turn 6. But watching that with my grandmother, I knew that I was going to be a sports fan. And by the next year, I already knew who Jim McMahon was, and I already liked him on the commercials. The next season, I picked the Reds because, again, they were always on my TV or radio, and the Bears because of Jim McMahon. I started really watching the Bears the next season, but all that's because of my grandma in the 86 World Series.
Well, God bless her. That's a great memory to share. I had great memories with my grandmother that I'll share on a separate show. It wasn't so much about sports, but it was about her marijuana dealing. My grandmother was a marijuana pusher. And so I'll share. That's a good tease for next week's show. I'll share stories never before shared by Aldo Gandia about his grandmother, Felicita Velez, who was a notorious drug dealer for the family. So I'll let you go with that, my friend, and we'll be talking throughout the week. And for those of you who have just joined us, because I see a lot of people are still joining us, I think they're kind of accustomed to us starting late, and so that's why people are joining us. Dan and I are going to the Cleveland Browns game, and we'll be talking about that more in shows to come. But we'd love for you guys to meet us up there. We're hoping to get a meeting room for us to have a confab and maybe do a live show, or at the very least meet at a watering hole. So we'll be talking a lot that more So hopefully you can start making your plans to go to Cleveland and meet Dan and Aldo as we bear ourselves on the road. Dan, I love you, and you're off to work, right?
Yep, I'm going for my other job. Again, I've got 84 hours this week, and I've only put in 20 so far. So I got a lot more to go, but I'm going to be there in Cleveland week 3, man. We're going to do it.
There you go. Get your rest also and eat well, okay, brother?
All right, be well. You have a good night.
All right. That is Dan Aguirre. I will leave you. Let me change the shot here for a second. Dan is gone. I'm solo. I will leave you by telling you that we've got a lot of great programming coming up the rest of the week on the network, and it starts tomorrow at 2 p.m. Central. Vinny and Joey Parisi. I don't know if you guys are hockey fans, the people who listen to Dan and Aldo bare their souls, but if you have not been paying attention to what is going on in the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs, shame on you, because that has just been some exciting sports action. NHL hockey, playoff hockey is just the best of any of the postseasons. Just no doubt about it. Close games, just superb games. I saw 3 games, the first 3 games of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and all of them went into overtime. All 3 games, the first 3 games of the playoffs. And so Vinny and Joey will be talking about that. And there were other sudden death playoff games as well. So they're going to catch us up to date on that. Catch us up to date on the latest Blackhawks news. But there's going to be lots and lots of hockey talk. Yeah, Chubbs, I hear you. It sucks with no Blackhawks. It really, really sucks. And Chubbs, I'm the kind of guy who, if there's not a Chicago team involved in postseason, then I don't really care. There's other things for me to pay attention to. You know, I can go to my porn library and enjoy that, or I can hang out with friends after seeing my porn library. Don't shake my hands. There's just so many other things, but because of the way the Barroom Network has been set up this year, I started watching NHL playoff games this year because of Bar Down, and I'm like, I am so happy I did that. These games are so exciting, and I've always known that playoff hockey was super exciting, but I just wouldn't watch it because there was other things to do. So, but it does suck that the Blackhawks are not in it, and so we'll get an opinion from Vinny and Joey, and they kind of issued their opinion last week, is that this team is probably some ways away from building a playoff roster. I don't necessarily agree with them. I think that with some clever postseason moves, they could create a playoff caliber team pretty soon here. The question is Bowman, Stan Bowman, the general manager of the team, is he the right guy to do that? So we'll talk about that on Bar Down Hockey. And when I say we, I mean Vinny and Joey Parisi. PJ says, although if you are from New York, how did you become a Bears fan? Well, here's the story, PJ. I was born in New York in 1958. Was born in Spanish Harlem. And my father, unfortunately, was a physically abusive alcoholic, my biological father. And so at the age of 7, we packed up and moved to Chicago. We came to Chicago. My mom says we're gonna set roots here and so forth. I though had to move back to New York because my biological father put in a claim for visitation rights and so forth. And so for a year, I think the year was 1967. If those of you who are old enough know that there was a gigantic, incredible snowfall here in Chicago. Unfortunately, for me, because I was a kid and I wanted to experience that snowfall, I was in New York and spending Sundays with my biological father to follow a court order. But and he would my father was a huge Yankees fan, Mickey Mantle, Tom Tresh. I remember him talking about it. I still wasn't totally acclimated to sports, but they got some kind of resolution done where I was able to come back to Chicago to live with my mom. And that's when I really became engulfed with sports and became a huge Bears, Cubs, White Sox. Yeah, both teams, because how great was it that I can see a Cubs game during the day and then a White Sox game at night. So I became a baseball fan, Bears fan, Blackhawks fan, listening to the games on WGN radio and watching the road games on TV on WGN TV, and Chicago Bulls fan. And back then, boy, if you were a Bulls fan, There were some good teams with the Jerry Sloan, the Norm Van Leer years, Tom Borowinkle, and so forth. But there was a lot of suffering too. The Mickey Johnson years with the Bulls and so forth. The years prior to Michael Jordan becoming a Chicago Bull they were pathetic. It was just a team that just did not care about winning. They cared about getting high and getting pussy is what and Michael came in and changed that thing. BJ, you're absolutely welcome. So that's my story about how I became a fan, a Chicago fan. It was just kind of geographical reasons. So besides Bar Down Hockey, we got a lot of other great shows. I won't go through the entire litany, but please let people know what we're doing here at the Barroom Network. We're trying to create programming that is diversified, lots of different shows for lots of different sports fans. And we want to be an alternative to what's going on in Chicago radio and Chicago sports. It's like I turn on cable stations, NBC Sports Chicago, and I'm expecting for them to cover Bears mini camp or something, and then at 2:00 in the morning there's a infomercial on the George Foreman skillet or something. I don't know what's going on there, and so we want to kind of fill that void for Chicago fans. Chubbs82 says that's what they said on the documentary. They were being outsold by an indoor soccer team. So I'm not sure what you're saying there. That's what they said on the documentary. They were being outsold by an indoor soccer team. I'm not sure what that means, but Chubb says he's also going to the Tampa Bay game, and that will be a great game to go to. It could be the end of Tom Brady's career. All it takes is one sack, right, Brett Favre? Oh, the Bulls. Thank you, Chubbs. I get what you're saying now. That the Last Dance documentary they were being outsold by an indoor soccer team. You're absolutely right. What a great documentary that was, right? The Last Dance with Michael Jordan. And I don't know if you guys saw the last week's episode, Saturday night's episode of Saturday Night Live. The guest, and I always screw up his name, Keegan Thomas Peel, right? Anyway, he was the guest host, and they did a takeoff on The Last Dance, and it was brilliant. It was so effing funny. So you can go to YouTube and just hit Saturday Night Live Last Dance, and you'll find it. It's a 4-minute video. You'll have a great laugh. That's all I got. I wish I could stay up longer, but I'm not good at writing solo. I need a guest host. So if you have just tuned in, make sure you go back and listen to the previous 3 hours of this show. We had Mike Schaefer, the proprietor of Deep Dish Teas, and he answered tons of questions about his role on the ESPN documentary. He of course is also on the Barfly Tailgate Show. We talked football. We talked about Justin Fields. I believe that there's a very good chance Justin Fields is going to be the game one starter. And I'm not saying that as a fan. I'm saying that as kind of an informed football fan and the possibilities. BJ says, I would love to hear in depth at the Bears rookie camp and their mini camps. BJ, I got you. Absolutely. And we were going to have a special on Sunday night to discuss that, but I had a family thing pop up. And so, unfortunately, I had to cancel that, but all of these rookie and mini camps, trust me, the Barroom Network is going to be here for you to, at the very least, aggregate what is being shared by the media and by the Chicago Bears, and then share that with you here. But in addition to that, add in our own analysis of what is going on with the Chicago Bears during this offseason with these camps. And so we've got a great stable of hosts. And hey, all of you people too are invited to either participate via the chat room or even come on as a guest. If you want to talk with us, reach out to me on my DM at Barroom Network in Twitter and tell me, hey, I'd like to come on and talk about the Bears and so forth. We'll have you on as a 10-15 minute guest, and so you can share your opinion, whether it's on this show or one of the other many shows that we have in the Barroom Network. And I don't know if you guys missed the announcement. John Buffone is now in charge of football programming here at the Barroom Network. So if you have ideas on what we should be doing regarding football programming, you should be following John on Twitter, and it's at Buffone, Buffone. And I want to devote some more of my time to some of the other programming that we have on the Barroom Network to expand our offerings and so forth. So I asked John to take over the football side of stuff. And while I'll still have a heavy role in the programming, either as being a co-host or behind the scenes and so forth, he is in charge of yes or no, whether we're going to go with new shows and collecting ideas for new shows and new programming or adding to the programming that we have. Reach out to John with your thoughts. He would love to hear from you guys. So it's at JDBUFFONE on Twitter, at John Buffone. PJ says, I don't have Twitter. So that's a good question. If you don't have Twitter, tell you what, I am going to get John's email address and I'll share that in the future show. I'm sure he wouldn't mind if I shared that publicly. And if he does, then we'll figure out some other way, PJ, for you and other fans to reach out to John. He loves to engage with people and collect ideas. He's very analytical in that way. So and Chubb says he came back to Twitter today. Chubbs, are you on suspension or were you just took a hiatus for a while? I know every once in a while I just put down all social media. I'm not going to do it. I think I did it Monday. Just need to stay away from it. And then, when I come back, I come back with a vengeance, sharing opinions and retweeting stuff, because Twitter can be a toxic playground for so many of us. But Chubbs, I'm interested in knowing whether you were kicked out for some reason or you just took a break from it. But again, back to the Barroom Network. Yeah, we're doing some really cool things here, and a lot of it is just based on what you guys want to hear and see on the network. And so we're working feverishly at building together not only our other sports programming outside of football, but also embellishing what we have with the Chicago Bears. Chubbs says, my last account got deleted. It's a long story. I did get why do I? So, Chubbs, make sure you send me your current Twitter account so I can follow you. PJ says, might I suggest shows that offer tape reviews of players? That way the proof is on the tape. Well said, PJ. And I'm actually, John and Danny Shimon and myself to a smaller degree, but primarily those guys, and maybe Neil Stopchinski are going to be working on some ideas for that. There's no one better at analyzing tape than Danny Shimon and Neil Stopchinski. So we want them to do that. Besides their responsibilities of looking at all the tape regarding prospects for next year, I would love it if one or both of those guys can also be analyzing tape from week to week about the Chicago Bears players and so forth. And so we're working on that. And if for some reason those guys can't because of their schedules, then we'll be reaching out to other experts. I thought about myself personally do it, but I don't really have the expertise to break down tape like a draft Dr. Phil or a Brett Coleman or some of these other guys that do it so well. Robert Schmitz for Windy City Gridiron, he does it very well as well. I don't have that expertise. I can break it down in an entertaining way because that's my background, information and entertainment, but I couldn't do it. So what I would love to see is somebody like Danny be able to free up some time so that he can break down tape, because I think that's always been an important offering of the Barroom Network, and we would love to continue that. So PJ says, yeah, exactly. A show that tapes that shows tapes of players every week. Yeah, especially this upcoming season with. One of my biggest concerns this upcoming season is the offensive line. I don't know if you guys, I don't think Chubbs and PJ were here for the Eric Galco part of the show, but don't fear if you can't get a chance to go back and listen to the entire Dan and Aldo 3.5 hour show. The Eric Galco portion, and he is the executive director of the East-West Shrine Game. I asked him for analysis of the Bears draft picks, and Eric, who is a longtime scout in the business, offered some expert analysis, and he shared his concerns about having Tevin Jenkins become a plug and play left tackle. He says he's a plug and play right tackle right now, But moving him to left tackle, there's going to be some growing pains involved in that. So I would love to have a tape series where we can kind of analyze what is going on with the offensive line, because as we all know, those of us who are devout football fans, the game is won at the line of scrimmage. So with that, I am going to bid adieu. Let me find my closing videotape and tell you that we will be back. Dan and Aldo, Bear Their Souls, will be back next Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. And then after that, there might be some craziness with the schedule because it's a Memorial Day weekend. So we might shift things around to accommodate people's schedules. And PJ, I hear what you're saying. Yes, I want to see the offensive line, running back, and wide receivers. Absolutely. I'm with you. Jay and Chubbs, I'll see you too, brother. Thanks so much for being a part of the Dan and Aldo Bear Their Souls show. It makes it a lot more fun to have that interaction with you guys. So until next week, we will see you, and hopefully you can join us on Wednesday for Bar Down Hockey. And then on Thursday, among the many shows we've got ready for Thursday. Thursday is a full day lineup. It starts with at the morning at 8 a.m. We're moving Mike North just for this week, 8 a.m. Mike North advantage, so he'll have some betting tips, and I'm sure he's got some rants ready to rock and roll. So 8 a.m. an early start, so we can accommodate some other things going on in the schedule. At 2 p.m. it'll be Crosstown Crosstalk. Vinny and Joey have their new baseball show, and they've got some really great stuff planned for us. And then we've got another show. I should write all this stuff down, man. My memory is all so screwed up. It is C-Red Radio, the Chicago Bulls talk, and those guys are just cool to listen to. Even though the Bulls are not in the postseason, you'll want to listen to what they've got to say. So that's it. Until next time, thank you all for watching.